everybody. Ooh. Happy daylight savings. Hopefully, at some point we're gonna abolish this stupid thing. This is actually the one that I don't mind as much, which is funny because, you know, it's the one where you lose an hour, but gaining an hour just totally throws off my whole business. Because you have to eat later, and it's just weird, and I don't like it. So I was thinking that, oh, I'll try to maybe keep my eating times the same and just time shifted, artificially time shifted. Maybe that'll help. We are back again with our life. Last time we left off in the middle of stage 3, which is teenaged. We're 18 years old and we're an adorable boyfriend-girlfriend couple. And in the last episode, we just told each other I love you for the first time, and it was super cute. Prepare yourselves for more cuteness. I can only imagine that's what's in store. Oop. All right, looks like we're okay. We're gonna go to load. I'm gonna make an effort to stay hydrated here. Let's do errands. From the moment you woke up, you knew that today was going to be busier than usual. There was a list of errands that needed to be finished before the day was done. This looks like a farmer's market. First up was visiting one of the biggest farmer's markets in the area. It was only open 2 weekends a month during certain parts of the year. It was rare that you and your family were able to attend, so your moms liked to make the most out of every minute of it. That does sound cool. And you realized it was not just them feeling that way when you heard a whistle from your left side. Wow, this is a swanky show. Vegetables have never seemed so highbrow. Seriously, they don't mess around with their products.
Isn't that great?
Liz crossed her arms. You could tell that she was amused. We couldn't have picked a more perfect trip. It's been too long since we've had a true family outing. Aww. Her teasing tone said more than she actually did. Your next-door neighbors had joined you this day, and that's what made it a true family outing. The 3 parents laughed approvingly. Out of the corner of your eye, you caught Cove looking at you sympathetically. Some things never changed, and some jokes never died. You'd long accepted that. I'm excited to check things out. Heck yeah, farmers markets are awesome. There were so many stalls, you couldn't even imagine what hidden gems you might find among them. Bubbling with anticipation, you smiled. Well, I'm ready to get started. I've got plenty of dishes in mind I could use ingredients for. Oh, that's right, he's a good cook. Before your moms responded to that, they glanced at each other and smiled. Yes, that's a very good idea, Cliff. This place is much larger than it seems. It's difficult to visit each part in a single day.
I got it.
I'm sure we can make a decent dent together at least. Actually, since there are so many of us this time, we could take different sides of the market.
Sounds good.
Divide and conquer, eh? That sounds brilliant. Everyone watched your mom, surprised. No one had considered that option. Oh, no one had considered that an option, but your moms flashed the group a dazzling smile, continuing with the thought. Though, it's a little unfair that there are 4 Letters family members and only 2 Holdens here, so I'll go with you boys to even out the odds.
Okay.
That's fine with me. Cliff scratched the back of his neck and slowly met Cove's stare. They both seemed unconvinced, but they weren't sure what to say about it. Don't worry, we'll only be apart for a few hours, and then we'll have something to talk about at the end of it. Father and son ultimately nodded. This wasn't an argument they were going to win.
All right.
All right. I don't get the point, but I also don't mind spending the first part of the trip with Kate and Ma. Ma clapped her hands together at that. Wonderful, are the teams ready to go? Can I be the one that goes to the Holdens instead? Yeah, let's go. That's fine. Delighted, Ma hooked an arm around you in a little side hug. You grinned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Taking the lead, Mom walked over toward Cove and Cliff, who were still eyeing her confusedly.
Let's go.
Come on, boys, we're heading out. Sure. Okay. Cove looked at you softly and found himself pulled forward, stopping in front of you. His expression flickered for a moment, hesitant. Bye. Aw. He lightly took one of your hands in his and gave it a small squeeze. He dipped his face forward, wanting to kiss farewell. When instead he stopped midway, his whole body stiff. He jerked his gaze back at your mom, and you realized that she had grabbed the hem of his shirt. She gave it a small tug before letting go.
No.
Time's a wastin', Cove, and I've known you long enough to be aware you're one to linger. If I don't stop you now, you only drag your feet on parting ways more. The two of you can snuggle and make out as much as you want later. We have important shopping to do now. Cove gasped at what he felt was a truly obscene thing to say. His face burned red, but that was ignored by him. He spoke with an unimpressed roll of the eyes.
Seriously?
You don't need to literally pull me away from Kate. I'm not that clingy. Adorable. Mom sniggered with a shake of her head. Cove's eyebrows raised over the reaction, and he turned to Ma. She wouldn't meet his eye as she whistled innocently. Liz smirked ear to ear, and Cove whipped his head toward his dad. Mr. Holden couldn't offer anything more than an apologetic shrug. It was only then that it dawned on Cove that everyone did think that he was that needy. Oh, poor thing. Oh. Finally, he dared to face you with wide, pleading eyes. There is nothing wrong with being attached. It's nice. And you meant it. You very much enjoyed Cove's company and his affectionate nature, but that wasn't exactly a denial of what he was being accused of. Mom's smile grew. Cove couldn't believe that he was being completely outnumbered. His mouth twisted as he struggled to come up with something to say in his defense. Yeah, well, so what? That admission had Liz, your moms, and his dad bursting into laughter. Cove grimaced and walked several steps from the group before stopping. He clearly wanted to move on, so much that he was physically moving away. I'll see you soon. For a moment you weren't sure if Cove heard you over the noise of the market, but then he nodded. You smiled softly, watching him get over his embarrassment and relax a little bit. See you in a few hours. Take care of yourselves. At that, Mom picked a direction and set out into the market with Mr. Holden and Cove following behind her. Excuse me. Grinning, Ma set them off with a big wave. Liz gave a daintier goodbye wave herself. Despite the change in plans, I was still glad to be there. Look, I like Cove a lot, but I don't need to spend every single second with him. Like she said, we got to make out later. It wasn't what you'd imagined, but that didn't matter. There was a whole market to explore, and you couldn't wait to find some good stuff. When they had gone, Ma cheerily turned toward you and Liz. She put her hands on her hips. Do you think there'll be any nice ginger around here? We'll have to find out. You nodded in agreement, keen to truly get the trip going. Ma led you both into the busy market. Some time passed browsing. There were only a few stalls you stopped at. You had some fun chatting and laughing, pointing out various things to Ma and Liz and vice versa. At one point, Ma stopped suddenly. She put her hand on her belly and gave a half-hearted smile. I think I should have used the bathroom before we left home like the two of you responsibly did. Just need to pee?
Yes.
Yes, Liz. I'll have to visit the ladies' room now. Should Liz and I go on without you? Ma craned forward as she struggled to pinpoint the direction she needed to go. She gently considered your suggestion. Actually, I might need help finding my way. Can you please come, Lizzie? You and your sister had to share a look over that. Why do that of all things?
Hey.
Ma, if anyone should go anywhere on their own, shouldn't it be you? You're the one needing a detour, and you're the parent here. Ma giggled, unfazed by the resistance. Liz, meanwhile, tipped the brow of her hat up, watching Ma skeptically. Soon enough, Kate will have to handle doing these kinds of errands on her own. This makes good practice. What? I'm being abandoned! Why are they abandoning me? Ma hooked an arm around Liz and pulled her along. Have fun, we'll find each other again later. Excuse me? I stood there stunned. You watched dumbfounded as they waded into the crowd. They were out of sight within moments, and what started as a group outing rapidly became you, entirely on your own. I don't know what to think. Still couldn't believe Ma just did that. There wasn't a single doubt in your mind she had some ulterior motives, but for now you had to figure out what to do next. Walk off on my own. Resigned to your fate, you picked up where you left off browsing the stalls. One hooked your attention. Ooh. While most stalls were selling various garden-grown foods, this one had an array of homemade fudge. There were even vegan versions of every option. Soon your gaze drifted elsewhere. It was fun getting a peek at all the fudge options, but you weren't enticed enough to buy any. You pondered for a moment at what you should do now. None of the stalls were catching your eye. What did grab your attention, however, was a head of familiar seafoam hair sticking above the crowd. You knew instantly it was Cove. He hadn't noticed you yet, but he was walking in your direction. He held a couple of bags tightly in his hand. Strangely, you couldn't spot your mom or his dad anywhere. Called out to him. Standing firm, you cupped your hands around your mouth for added protection, took a deep breath. Cove Holding, get your butt over here! He instantly stopped dead in his tracks. Alert, Cove's head snapped up, and his eyes searched the crowd until they landed on you. His whole demeanor brightened at the sight. He weaved through passerby awkwardly in an attempt to get through as fast as reasonably possible, nearly stumbling more than once. It only took a moment for him to arrive. It was undeniable that he was shopping by himself. You stared at him, confused. Did you ditch your group? Cove crossed his arms defiantly, the bags twisting in front of him. Your mom took my dad and I ended up alone. Why are you by yourself? Ma and Liz abandoned me too.
What?
What? What is happening? I can't believe this happened to both of us. They planned it. They had to, but I don't know why. Are they pranking us? I don't know either. And you meant it. You couldn't fathom what your moms were up to. Cove shook his head, trying to clear his mind.
So...
Well... His change in tone caught your attention. You watched his eyes start to twinkle with mischief as his mouth pulled into a cheeky smile. You know, it is technically later, and your mom isn't around this time. You chuckled, knowing exactly what he was implying. That incident was already replaying in your head. I kiss him. You stepped closer, placing a hand on his upper arm. Cove beamed and leaned in. It was quick. Too quick, but you could feel him smile through it. When you both did part, Cove chuckled affectionately. I'm glad it's later.
Me too.
So, his gaze wandered off as if one of your parents might simply appear if he kept checking, and you could tell he was still processing the situation. He scratched the back of his head, looking sheepish. Do you want to forget about whatever's happening and go shopping together? Heck yeah! There was little care in your mind for what your moms had planned. You were ecstatic at the thought of spending the rest of the trip with him.
Don't worry about it.
Even if we have to make our own fun, we're gonna have a good trip. Yeah, this is like... we're practicing. Being adults. And shopping together. Cove smiled at you encouragingly. It made you feel... more optimistic now. Having him there was already comforting, and now he also seemed determined to improve your day by any means. That had you looking forward to what was coming next. So where to first? I don't mind going back the way I came if it's new to you. It's not hard to miss stuff, even if I've gone past it. What have you gotten? Cove shuffled his bags around and started pulling them open so you could peek inside each one. You recognized the array of things he picked up around the market. I mostly got typical things I can use pretty easily so far, nothing super exciting. There were a few onions, some lemons, and sweet potatoes, among other things that were wrapped up so you couldn't discern what they were. What Cove bought made sense, but it was far from a complete selection. You glanced around at the nearby stalls. Want to start over there? Cove followed your eye as you pointed at one of the larger stalls. It was filled with several kinds of staple fruits and vegetables. Yeah, let's go. Once a few people finished paying and moved, you and Cove got yourself directly in front of the shop. There were so many things to pick from. Peppers. Lettuce. Carrots. That was everything. The shop owner put your selection together and handed you to you all in a single bag. Happily, you paid and waited for Cove to make his purchase. Ready to go? Cove grinned, satisfied with his new choices. He added another bag to his small but growing collection. You nodded. Oh, wait, before we start moving on and everything, wanna hold hands? Yee. There was no way you could say no to that face. Delighted, you laced your fingers with his without hesitation. Cove squeezed your hand back. With renewed eagerness, your boyfriend nodded his head in the direction you'd been going towards.
All right.
Okay, now let's go. Together, you and Cove wandered the market on the lookout for any stalls that caught your attention. Cove was walking around with a spring in his step, talking about the various meal ideas he had in mind. After a while, you had to go greater distances to find something of interest. Several stalls were selling the same goods. It was only a matter now of which you wanted to buy from. Definitely a farmer's market problem. You continued ambling down the path until Cove stopped suddenly, literally pulling you away from your thoughts. Cove? You followed his eye line past the crowds. Immediately, you knew what grabbed him: homemade jams and local honey. Ooh. That stall was glittering with quaint glass jars stacked high, each encasing gels of varying colors. Cove's eyes were practically sparkling at the sight. His feet automatically began to take him there, likely without being fully aware that he had made an unexplained detour. When you got closer, you were surprised there were even more varieties than you thought. There were even different honeys based on what types of pollen the bee used. Cove's focus seemed torn between a bottle of blackberry jam and one of clover honey. I like it you could say it or with sarcasm. Everything looks really good. Cove held up the 2 jars in his hands for you to see. He grinned ear to ear.
Right.
He continued to weigh the decision in his mind, actually lifting one higher and dropping the other lower during the process as if they were on a scale. You thought things over for yourself, too. Honey butter sounds good. Blackberry jam, and that was everything. You paid. The stop owner started putting together your order. They carefully packed it in a single bag with paper. Thank you very much. Amused, you watched Cove give in and just buy the clover honey and blackberry jam. He also went all in, getting spring wildflower honey and plum jam too. The shop owner thoughtfully wrapped each in brown paper to protect them before putting them away in a bag. He handed the purchase to Cove.
Thank you.
You both stepped away from the stall. Cove didn't fail to notice the look you've been giving him since he agonized over his toast toppers. Hey, this doesn't go bad for a long time, so why not stock up? I could have chosen one if I wanted to. Uh-huh. For a moment I thought you were going to buy the whole stall. Cove laughed, but he still tried to shake his head in disapproval. You hoped he enjoyed every bit of what he bought. As you began to stroll, Cove looked up at the sky. He smiled. It was sort of unexpected, considering all of this was technically an errand, and unexpected changes often upset him. But he was happy, and Cove liked doing this kind of normal thing. And you could tell that Cove especially enjoyed doing these kinds of things with you. Blushed, thinking about how comfortable doing this with Cove felt. Felt more than normal or mundane. It felt right. We're so domestic. Cove took a sharp intake of air and started coughing for a moment. Afterwards, he looked at you in your teasing grin and chuckled.
Right.
That is true. I like it. Later, when you spotted a less crowded area, you took a break from browsing. Cove started rummaging through one of his bags, just to check on how his goods were doing. A smile grew on his face as he went on to the next. You chuckled, knowing there wasn't a single doubt in your mind that Cove would let anything go to waste. He was gonna eat it all. You held a hand in front of your face as you squinted upwards. The sun had moved quite a bit. You'd been at the market for a good while now. Calm a splice. Proofread your stuff. Neither your feet nor your arms were sore right now, and Cove looked to be doing fine too, but that was something that could be coming. There was a price to pay for this much shopping, and it wasn't always just in money. Quietly enjoyed the break from walking. There was a breeze, and you just barely noticed in the air. Oh, there was a breeze you just barely noticed in the air, and you contentedly sighed, happy the weather was cooperative for the market. It made things even better. Want a ride? Staring at him quizzically, you raised an eyebrow. Cove chuckled awkwardly and his cheeks turned a light shade of pink. He tried again. I mean a piggyback ride. You could take a little rest. I don't mind. Can you just carry my things? Okay, hand them over. For you, I can do it. Thank you. You flashed him your best smile and passed him the bags. Your arms were already feeling better as you watched Cove add your things to his own bundle. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He nodded while in thought. Cove was still deciding on how he was going to manage them all. Oh no. You watched as Cove hooked a few... Whoop. Didn't mean to right-click. But now I know that does that. You watched as Cove hooked a few bags on the forearm of his left side, and then he grabbed the remaining things in that same hand. It confused you. He noticed your expression and then reached over to give your hand a gentle stroke of his thumb. This hand's already holding something. Flattered, you couldn't help but squeak a little as your face burned. You had no idea Cove would do so much just to hold your hand. Hello, Super Base. Welcome to the Adorable Zone. We're at a farmer's market because our whole family families came together, but for some reason they abandoned us, so now it's like we're on a little farmer's market date and it's adorable. Picked on Valheim, it's literally... Oh, you picked up Valheim, it's literally Viking Minecraft. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I've heard of that. And with that, you and Cove continued your trip through the market together. Ma and Mom had both texted you during the trip, though only to say that they hoped you found some good stuff and that they'd see you later. There were no answers on where they went or why. You and Cove continued to wind your way through the bustling market, the list of outstanding items steadily shrinking while the bags grew heavier. Eventually, Cove realized he hadn't checked his own phone in a while, his hands being preoccupied for the last while. He asked to let go for now, and you agreed. The two of you came to a stop in the nearest alcove, where you'd be out of the steady stream of people perusing the stalls, and he pulled out his phone. Cove rearranged all the bags he was carrying, freeing a hand so that he could pull out his phone. You watched his eyes dart over the screen as he read the waiting messages. It's significantly more difficult than Minecraft. Trying to build a house, you died once during a raid as you tried to work with the concept, wood is weak. Oh no. Not important, I can reply to that later. He mumbled his verdict under his breath. Then Cove's face scrunched up with confusion.
Huh?
Wait, I've got a message from my dad. Listen to this. Cove, I wasn't part of the plan. I didn't know what was going on when I left with Kate's mom. Where are you? He sent that ages ago. I didn't hear it come in. He sent another one since then. Says he hopes I'm alright and that he's not bothering me. The newest one says everybody's going to the parking lot soon and we can meet up there. He lowered his phone, eyes narrowed. The same conclusion that was settling on you had landed on Cove as well. So it was on purpose! The crowd of people passing by stayed as noisy as ever, a sharp contrast to the silence that had fallen over you and Cove. He was rubbing the screen of his phone against his shirt, wiping away dust and debris. He continued scrubbing the screen long after anything that could have remained. The action a poor substitute for pushing away the awkwardness of the moment. Struggling to comprehend. It gets more complex trying to future-proof. Building your house at significantly elevated point, gravity literally sucks. Oh no! Some of your parents' actions made more sense with this context, but the bigger question, that of why, was still weighing you down. You groaned, the sound expressing your misery in ways that words couldn't. Cove leaned down, making his eyes level with yours. He laid his hands on your shoulders, grounding you. Cove's frown grew taut, his mouth a stiff, serious line, but his eyes wide with concern.
Sorry.
Sorry about your mom's leaving you alone out here like this without warning. His speech was slower than usual. You suspected that he was choosing each word carefully. It was unnatural, but you appreciated that he didn't want to risk upsetting you further. I don't know if you want to talk to them about this, but I can definitely back you up. I totally get that it's sucky. I want to let it go. I don't want to talk about it. Let's just move on.
It's okay.
You don't have to. His voice was soft and reassuring. He smiled, a gesture of gentle encouragement. Also, everything has weight. If you try to attach something to another thing that doesn't have enough strength to support it, the new structure breaks and comes down, so you actually have to plan your foundations and supports. And Vikings don't have tape measures. That does sound very difficult. I guess I'll vent since the game wants me to. I didn't want things to be like this. But they didn't even talk about it. I didn't get a chance to say anything. Cove listened, nodding gently as you unburdened yourself. You then took a deep breath, the fresh air steadying you. You didn't stop until your lungs were full. Cove watched over you, still concerned.
Sorry.
Even though I guess it's not exactly my fault this time, but is there anything I could do to make you feel better, even a little bit? You already have. Did? Yeah, you really did. Cove nodded in understanding. He smiled, a simple, open, honest smile, and you knew he had accepted your answer. After a moment, he stepped further away from you, face turned. Cove closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His brow creased, then furrowed in deeper into a scowl, his arms tightly coiling together. So they did do something stupid. I knew it. It's gonna end up being like a nice surprise for us. How much you want to bet? His voice had taken on an exaggerated quality, but what truly distinguished it from Cove's typical speaking tone was the abundance of rage. This is such a chore. Parents are so dumb. Why do people have to go places with family members anyway? I hate them. You got it instantly. It had been years since the boy with the bowl cut had been in town for the summer, but Cove had never forgotten. To this day, he continued to unleash his impersonation whenever the moment felt right. Sometimes you wondered if the act had grown more exaggerated over the years, or if the kid really was always that ridiculous. That kid's never gonna live that down, huh? Not ever. Cove gave you a lopsided smile, letting the joke rest for now. Come on, we should probably go meet up with the group. Yeah. You didn't dally any longer, slipping back into the crowd and making your way towards the entrance of the farmer's market. It didn't take long to reach the parking lot. Your parents, Mr. Holden and Liz, were already waiting there, and they waved at you both as you approached. Your own family seemed to be in pretty good moods. In contrast to Mr. Holden, he stared at Cove with open concern as you got closer. Hey, bud. Hey, Kate. How you doing? We'd be doing better if we hadn't been abandoned in a farmer's market by our families. You saw your mom's frowning at his response, Ma glancing from Cove to Mom with blinking eyes. Just because Kate tries to make things a good time no matter what, doesn't mean you can just leave her out of your plans and expect her to go with it every time. Ma hung her head, ashamed, and Mom had a hand pressed to her cheek. You could tell they were quickly regretting their scheme.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry, Kate. Her words were full of emotion. Mom squeezed Ma's arm. We were trying to make the errand more of a trip, less of a chore. Ma nodded. We didn't think you, Cove, and Liz wanted to be stuck trudging around a market with your parents all day, especially not in the summer. But you're always very thoughtful and don't like to leave your moms behind, so we did ourselves. It was only going to be for the market, not the other stops, I promise. Still, you're right, we could have just told you and let you make your own call. I really am sorry, neither of us meant to upset you.
I'm really sorry.
All gas, no brakes, and we should have known better, sorry. Ma ditched me too after pulling her urgent potty break stunt, if that helps. I went off to do my own shopping, as it seems they planned.
Sorry.
Sorry I didn't check back in with you. I wasn't thinking and just tried to blow it off. You quietly took in their stories of what happened. Over to the side, Cove was talking to his dad. Thanks for telling me something was up, though I feel bad for missing the warning when you sent it.
You're welcome.
It's no trouble, sport. I learned my lesson about making surprise plans. He's had character growth. Cove smiled at his dad. Mr. Holden, laughing, clapped Cove on the back.
Not bad.
Oh, we're really being outplayed today. You realized you hadn't been the only onlookers to the Holden's moment. Your moms were exchanging rueful looks. Liz had her arms crossed over her chest, patiently watching it all unfold. Yeah, looks like it. We better find some way to catch up.
In that case,
Maybe we could do Kate's chores for the week? Mom jabbed Ma on the shoulder. You might be onto something. Kate, how do you like the sound of that? They looked at you hopefully. Sounds good to me. Good, we're serious. At the very least, we can make sure everyone stays together for the rest of the stops we're making today. You all nodded at the suggestion. We won't let you down. We'll be the best sheepdogs ever, guarding the flock and catching any strays.
funny.
We could at least be shepherds. You chuckled, your mood lifting in spite of the bumpy morning. It was going to be all right. You turned to the entrance for the farmer's market for one final glance, pressing it into your memory under this new light. You thought on what you'd picked up at the market and how you were going to enjoy it later. Some things you could only get from local suppliers like this. That was another perk about coming along to the market today. Cove then sidled up next to you, an eager smile on his face. You could tell from his expression that he was up to something. I know this wasn't part of the plan for the day, but nothing that happened really was, so... You've been plotting your own scheme? He laughed. Anyway, well, I sort of picked something out with you in mind. You held a hand to your chest, staring at Cove as he explained further. Since your moms decided we should shop separately, I figured I could use the time to get you something, just as a little surprise. Aw. He reached into one of his bags and retrieved one of the wrapped-up objects. You accepted the unexpected present as he looked on excitedly as you tore off the paper. It was a glass bottle of cool spring water. You didn't need to taste it to know it would be nice. It was a boutique product. It was heavy in your hands, the container and small metal cap reaffirming the quality. Even the label, constructed from coarse paper rather than a flimsy sheet of plastic, was distinctive. You were practically bouncing in anticipation as he smiled sweetly at your reaction. It's not a big deal, but I just thought you might like it. You didn't have to do that. You were touched that Cove wanted to treat you to something nice. Whether you were physically together or not, you were clearly always on his mind and in his heart. Liz clapped her hands together with the air of a teacher calling for attention. Since the other adults aren't acting like grown-ups, the rest of us are going to have to pick up the slack. It's time to get back on schedule and continue with the rest of the errands. Playtime is officially over. Ma laughed while Mr. Holden grinned awkwardly. Mom hung her head in an exaggerated, explained mock defeat. Kids are tough, and I can't even call them kids anymore. Liz tut-tutted with amusement at her mother. Cove shrugged, staying a neutral observer, but the small smile on his face revealed that he was enjoying the conclusion. Sorry, that term has expired. You grinned, letting them know you were at least partially joking, though really, you and Cove and Liz could hardly be called kids these days. You were glad that everyone was getting along. With that, your trip to the farmer's market was closed. It was time to move on. There were too many of you for one car, so you and Cove had wound up in Mr. Holden's car on the way over. You figured it made sense to do the same for the next leg of the journey. You sat next to Cove and back. After buckling in, Cove leaned back into his seat, letting himself be cushioned by the headrest. Once he had shifted a little, he appeared to have found the perfect angle for maximum comfort. He gazed out of the window, looking suitably content with the world. You followed suit, hunkering down in your seat and looking out of the window as the car pulled away from the lot. You knew Cove well enough to spot the signs of when he was physically present but mentally elsewhere. The way he would fall quiet, staring without seeing, the long blinks, all of which he was doing right now as he looked at nothing in particular. You closed your eyes as you pulled up the result to speak. You waggled your eyebrows at him jokingly. So what were you so lost in thought about? Well, I was just thinking about how nice you are. How nice I am? Yeah. His face grew redder as his hands clenched on top of his knees. You stared at him, hoping for an explanation, but Cove simply ducked his head. When he next spoke, his voice was barely more than a whisper. I'm lucky I get to be with you. I feel lucky too. He peeked at you from the corner of his eyes, still too shy to look at you directly. You smiled at him affectionately, eliciting an equally caring smile from Cove in return. You felt content, secure in your relationship with Cove. Dude, we're gonna OD on all this sugar. Oh my god. I'm gonna enjoy the drink now. Twisted off the cap and brought it to your mouth. Even before the first sip reached your lips, the scent tickled your nostrils. You took a swig. It was refreshing, the perfect way to hit the spot after a long morning trawling through the market. Not bad at all, thanks, Cove. He grinned at you, pleased that his pick had been well received.
You're welcome.
You spent the rest of the day completing the remaining errands all together as a group. I'm glad you closed the day with everyone. Ma had been true to her word and ensured you spent the rest of the time with the Letters family and the Holden family in one place. It had been a wonderful time, a lovely high note to end on. And that's the end of that one. We shall save. Accidentally saved twice. Whew. Talks. What kind of talks, I wonder? Another placid summer day was drifting by. Your daydreams were chasing each other, none sticking around long enough to become a firm plan. But you didn't really mind that right now. A tapping worked its way into those dreams. Focusing more, you realized it was coming from your window. A grin popped on your face as though it had been waiting all day for this moment. Heading to the window, you could see Cove outside. His habit of climbing this way really was a true Coveism. He'd rather scale your house than wait the couple of extra minutes for you to come down. Held out a hand to him. You offered Cove a hand to help him up. Once he was mostly inside, he took it to help steady at the last bit of his entrance. He needed the help despite how many times he'd done this.
Hey.
Hey, Kate. Sup, welcome home. You think my mom should invest in some bigger windows? Cove laughed at that and took one last look at his exclusive entrance. He hummed with a teasing look on his face. It'd make my life easier, that's for sure. Cove's voice came out quietly with a strangely pleased smile on his face. Did something happen? Cove opened his mouth to answer, only to have your phone vibrating cut him off. You both turned to where it rested a little further up on your bed. It was still face down, so you couldn't tell who was calling. It's okay. Your attention shot back to Cove. He smiled at you awkwardly.
Don't worry about it.
Go check. It could be important. I'll wait. Thanks. You shuffled forward and scooped the little noisemaker into your hand. You flipped over and checked the caller ID. It's Miranda. Oh, you should answer it. I want to say hi too. With a nod, you accepted the call and set it to speaker. Hi, Miranda. Hi. There was something off about her tone. Cove met your gaze, and you saw the same confusion in his expression.
Have you heard from Terry?
Have you heard from Terry at all, or did you hear about her from Cove? Huh? No, she hasn't called me, but Cove is with me right now. Hey. Oh, hi, Cove. Is that what you were going to say? He shook his head no, before realizing that that wasn't a good enough answer when one person couldn't actually see it.
No.
No, Terry hasn't called me today either. Is something wrong? At that, Miranda couldn't hold herself together any longer. The muffled sobs from the other end of the line were unmistakable. Terry doesn't like me anymore, if she ever did. What? That doesn't sound right. You're probably her best friend out of all of us. Yeah, why do you think that? She sniffled, and there was a pause you could hear her... And there was a pause as you could hear her shift her phone to her other hand. Terry was here the other night watching movies with me. We were up super late. She realized her parents probably went to bed, so they couldn't pick her up. My mom and dad were definitely asleep then. Dad works early. I tried telling her it was okay to just spend the night and she could text her parents what happened, but Terry really didn't want to. You glanced at Cove. He looked equally unsure as you about where this story was going. It didn't sound like a friendship-ending situation. I suggested things to make it easier if she was nervous, like she could sleep by herself in my room while I stayed somewhere else. Yeah? And I said we didn't have to sleep at all. We could have kept watching movies until one of our parents woke up. I wouldn't have minded. I know not everyone can do sleepovers, but Terry wouldn't even tell me what was really wrong or what I could do to help. I thought we could tell each other anything. I guess I was wrong. Did she stay in the end?
No.
No, we got too loud in the kitchen and my dad woke up. He offered to drive her home when he heard what was wrong. She texted me apologizing for my dad having to do that when he needed to rest, but that was it. She isn't talking to me anymore. You could hear every bit of the tears and heartbreak in Miranda's voice. This continued to be a shock for your neighbor, but Cove recovered and spoke gently. I'm really sorry.
I mean...
There's no way Terry wanted to make you feel this bad, or that she's just done with your friendship because of this. Miranda's sniffling continued. You hoped she had plenty of tissues handy. Okay, so we know that they're not a couple. They are just friends. Random question, how likely do I see myself returning to this game for the DLC? Pretty likely. I really enjoy this game, and I would like to support the creators, so I think I'll probably wait for the adulthood chapter to come out, because I'm hoping that they might have a bundle with all of the DLC together, because right now it's only available piecemeal, because the whole game isn't out yet. Stage 4 isn't out yet, but Stage 4 is free, but there's going to be DLC for it as well. So I'm hoping that once all of the DLC is out, they might have a bundle and I can like buy it all for a savings. So yes, but also I'm waiting, because I want to support the creators, but I also want to save money because I'm thrifty. But I really like this game a lot. I also think I want to play the other, like, I'm very curious about what happens if you're just like, yeah, Cove's my neighbor, but I'm kind of indifferent to him. Oh, you appreciate the explanation because you were going to buy it for me. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's not all out yet. It's not all out yet. the last part of the game is coming out sometime in 2021, the creator said. But I don't think they've gotten more specific than that yet. And then there will also be DLC for that stage 4. Yeah, you could be a total douche to him, yeah. You could be a total douche to Cove if you want. I mean, they don't have, like, antagonistic, but they have indifferent. So you could choose to be indifferent to Cove the whole game, and I'm curious. I mean, I love Cove. I love him, and I just want to be with him, but, you know, it would be interesting to see how the story changes if you're just indifferent to him. Like, I imagine the game would be a lot shorter, but then you could also do, the DLC, because in the DLC there's going to be, 2 other people that you can romance. Their stories aren't as long as you and Cove, because you didn't grow up together. So, what's the over-under for naming that profile Karen? To just be mean? I don't know, man. I would like to speak to the manager. I would like to return this $20 that you gave me because I don't like being friends with this boy. I want a refund. Miranda's sniffling continued. You hope she had plenty of tissues handy. It'll be okay. Had to be. You couldn't imagine any alternative. Miranda's voice sounded a little bit more collected after finishing her story, but you knew that the crying was far from being done. I thought she'd have reached out to one of you by now. Maybe she's not talking to anyone. Yeah. Sorry for bothering you and Cove about this. Apology accepted. Don't worry about it.
Right.
You can tell us these things. Thank you. Her shaking voice finally conveyed a little optimism, or at least relief that she wasn't dealing with it entirely on her own.
Is that all right?
If you do hear from her or anything, could you let me know if she's alright? We can. Thanks. Let's talk later, okay? Bye. 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 That didn't really seem like an especially productive point to end the call, though you also weren't sure where to go from there. Looking to Cove, his face seemed as lost as yours. With no alternative, you hung up and put your phone back on your bed. Cove crossed his arms, a frown creasing in his face. He began to pace the length of your room, clearly trying to put the pieces together in his head in a way that made sense. You want your 20 years of childhood back? Yeah, that sounds like something that Karen would do. I feel bad, because my sister's name is actually Karen. Not spelled that way, but I don't think she's fond of that meme. I'm not sure how to react. It was all too sudden and unclear. The empty state of your head before learning this was not helping you now. You couldn't put 2 thoughts together, and flopping back on your bed, you stared into space. I love how all of the problems are, like, very small. Like, oh, my parents abandoned me at the farmer's market. Okay, I'm just gonna go browse around by myself. My friends are having, like, a small misunderstanding. Okay, we're just gonna, like, talk to them. We should probably try calling Terry. Cove's voice managed to drag you back to some grounding. He had stopped pacing, but you still saw a perturbed look on his face. Is it really something we should get involved with right now? Cove's mouth pressed into a hard line. At the moment, it seemed like the two of you were on very different wavelengths as to how to deal with this.
Come on.
I want to talk to Terry. She's my friend, too. Fine, then let's call her. Cove looked away and pulled his phone out. You went over and stood at his side as he was dialing. Cove let it ring and ring and ring and ring and ring. Terry didn't answer. There wasn't even an option to leave a voice message. Your shoulders slumped, and Cove looked even more troubled, if that was possible. He turned to you as if for some lifeline. Maybe her parents grounded her. Like, it might have nothing to do with her feelings. She just knew that her parents would ground her. Your shoulder slumped, and Cove looked even more troubled if that was possible. He turned to you as if for some lifeline. Could you try calling? I'm gonna send a text like, hey, I was just trying to reach you, call me, or something. Yeah. You took up your phone once more. Unfortunately, after another set of interminable rings, the line went dead. No answer, no voicemail. Hanging up, you saw Cove visibly deflate. He rubbed his arm, eyes distant, openly struggling with the whole affair. I don't like this at all. They're fighting, we barely know anything, and we're just supposed to just wait and see? So there are Karens, and there are women named Karen. The way to not become a Karen is to accept that it's not always targeted at you, but at the concept of someone who is always overly nitpicky and rude. Oh yeah, she's not like, you know. She knows, it's just unfortunate that it is also her name. Like, man, it would have been nice if it was somebody else's name. Like, that's kind of her attitude toward it. Despite it only being a minute since he texted Terry, Cove checked his phone again. Oh, he was desperate for progress, for something, and you frowned as you watched him. Don't fixate, honey. It's okay. You need to try and relax. Cove stared hard at the screen as though he was trying to will a new message to appear. As your words sank in, his gaze slid over to you. Just a little bit? Come on, you're working yourself up. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and released it slowly. It wasn't much, but you could see him ease up slightly. Yeah, you're probably right. Cove was still gripping his phone with both hands, as though it might fly away if he let go. He looked to you with almost painful earnestness. What do we even say if we do hear from one of them? His pacing resumed as he attempted to answer his own question. We should probably tell them to talk to each other instead of only us, maybe. He slowly came to another halt, like a gear winding down. We should find out Terry's side of the story. Nothing could be done until you knew what she thought of this, that much was certain. Cove nodded slightly in agreement. For several minutes, you both remained there in silence, drowning in your thoughts. Eventually, Cove turned around. I'm gonna text Terry that we already know what's going on. Maybe she'll have an easier time talking to us because she won't have to pretend or explain. I think you're pushing too much. Cove's eyebrows grew together and his grip on his phone tightened. Cove, just because you're upset doesn't mean you can cross lines, especially when we still don't know the whole story. Cove bit his bottom lip. You could see in his posture that you'd made sense to him, but he was fighting his desire to agree with you and keep going his own way. I want to give him a hug. You felt bad for him and your friends and yourself too. You bit your bottom lip trying to gather your thoughts. There's just so much to consider. Miranda's sadness, whatever was wrong with Terry, and now Cove, but the last thing you needed was to fight with him. Finally, it seemed to dawn on him what his words had been doing to you. All the anger and frustration crumbled away, leaving a look of contrition in its place. That there are those who bully people and can't understand that not all Karens are Karens. We should dub them Kens. He put his phone away. He made an effort to smile, but it was meager, and he did nothing to conceal the sadness in his eyes.
I'm sorry.
I'm really sorry, Kate. I never know what to do with this kind of thing. Maybe we should just forget about it. Sounds good to me. And you meant it, exhaling with some of your own concern away. Last thing you wanted was to fight with Cove. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but it likely wasn't that long before there was a knock at your bedroom door and Mom peeked in. Just wanted to check in on you. Oh, Cove, when did you get here? When she saw your morose expressions, she opened the door all the way, and the question was dropped. Moss was standing there as well. She slipped in past her wife to come inside your space.
Everything okay?
What's wrong with the long faces? You both okay? You tried to nod, but it was no use. Your voice cracked despite your best effort to not let it get to you more. Miranda and Terry had a big fight, and none of us can get a hold of Terry. Your parents exchanged a meaningful look, though its meaning was lost on you.
I am so sorry.
I'm so sorry to hear there's trouble with your friend, sweetie. Is there anything we can do to help? Out of the corner of your eye, you saw Cove rub his arm awkwardly, unable to add anything. No, we're just waiting to see if Terry calls or texts, or if Miranda does. Well, we can at least help take your mind off things while you're waiting.
Yeah.
Another great idea, Lonnie. We can get the whole gang together for some quality time. Mom gave you a soft smile and added, This will be good, especially since it might make up for what happened at the farmer's market. Yes, it'll be wonderful. I'll go see what Liz is up to right now. Excited, she fluttered a few steps away and then stopped. She pivoted on her heels and raised a single finger, flashing a big smile at Cove.
It's no trouble.
And of course, Cliff will be welcome too. Knowing your family was always there for you, that couldn't be underestimated. In fact, it meant everything to you that your moms cared so much. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, thanks. That's nice of you.
You're welcome.
You're both very welcome. Don't sweat it, not so, kiddos. Leave things to us. Just relax and we'll call you when it's all together. You nodded, and your moms dispersed for now, springing into action for their impromptu get-together. You flopped down in your bed, feeling like you could sink into it and disappear. Cove, meanwhile, took a spot on the chair off to the side. Comically, you tried to write a script for a text adventure once. It is truly amazing how fast the script bloats, as different paths require different lines. It's worse because if you don't want exponential growth, you need to railroad the paths back at some point, and it makes players feel like the choices don't matter. Yeah, I can see that. But if you do it too much, yeah, you have to find the right balance, for sure. For sure. But, you notice there was that little line about, oh, it'll make up for what happened at the farmer's market. I can choose the order in which I do those moments. So if I had done the farmer's market after this one, that line probably wouldn't have shown up. That was an if statement. I've played around with Ren'Py a little bit, which is a visual novel tool where you use Python commands to make it work. And that was pretty fun, but it was like a very short, almost like an intro to what a game would be. And it was a fair amount of work just for that. Yeah, let's say you have 3 choices, and each of those have 3, and then each of those have 2. That's already 18 unique scenes. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why a lot of the things in this game particularly, I think they railroad back a lot. Because the level of customization is so high, but it'll only be like a line or 2 that's different. And then it goes back to the regular story. But even that is a lot of work. You sighed at the same time, and Cove's mouth pulled into a bent smile at that. He gave his phone another quick check, and his eyebrows furrowed. Still nothing? Yep, this is crap, huh? Yep. Cove chewed the inside of his cheek, as if to mimic the stress that was clearly eating away at him. Cove, what's wrong? What's really wrong? One disagreement doesn't make you act like this. That got a pointed pause in his movement. Cove was carefully trying to put his thoughts together. He spoke in a fragile voice. When people you care about, when they're unhappy with each other, there's nothing you can do. At least when you're in a fight yourself, you have some responsibility, some control over it all. I wonder if this is divorce baggage. Welcome to being a DM, where the players do half your work for you. I wish it didn't have to happen, but that isn't possible, so oh well, I guess. His attempt at giving a nonchalant shrug after that was pitiable. It's true, but you're right, it can't be helped. I know. He replied like he could barely muster the strength to speak. Well, we just have to focus on things we can impact, or at least try. You turned to Cove, hoping your eyes conveyed the message that you were feeling better than your words. His gentle nod to you told you that they did. There was a question you had to ask. Is it because of what happened with your parents? Cove ran a hand through his hair, a strange smile spreading across his lips. For him, this pain struck close to his heart. Just as quickly as it had come, his smile was gone, lost amidst his faraway gaze. Yeah, you got it. It's like my parents. Despite knowing him for so many years, Cove had never spoken of the years before he moved to Sunset Bird, before his parents separated, in any detail. Also, random question. Fantasy or sci-fi? Which do you like more? It's kind of a tough one, but I think, based on my reading history, probably sci-fi. I was into fantasy and stuff when I was younger. Like, I remember I read a good number of the Redwall books. And I was into, like, princesses and stuff like that. But as I got older, I got more into, like, sci-fi type stuff. Or, what's it called? Alternate future. God, what is that called? What is that called? It's the genre that The Handmaid's Tale is in. Where it's not, there isn't like any science-y elements to it, but it's still like, I'm not gonna come up with it. Don't know if you ever looked in the BioWare games, Dragon Age and Mass Effect, but those are worth checking out. Yes, I've not played them, but I've seen T-Bone play them. And unfortunately, I know the ending for Mass Effect. Mass Effect 3, which... Talking about none of your choices matter. Yeah, that's your Mass Effect 3 for you. Ugh. Stretch. But, you know, maybe it's worth the journey or something like that. Very visual novel while still being a game. Which colored ring do you want? Yeah, basically. Yeah, I remember that whole big controversy when it came out. That was terrible. I hadn't even played anything, and I was like, oh, that is awful. Why would you do that? Oh boy. I remember playing this one visual novel, Katawa Shoujo, which is a visual novel where you go to this school for people with disabilities and you can like romance a bunch of different girls. And there was this one girl who I really liked, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And her path was the most boring path. It only had one choice, and I chose incorrectly because I did not get the subtext of what was going on in that scene, and I was so pissed. I was like, are you kidding me? One choice in the whole path. And it was so long, too. I was just like, why? Why did you do this? This has just become novel instead of visual novel. Like, anywho. Most people disliked Dragon Age 2, but one of the final chapter sequences is one of the most your choices do matter that I think we'll ever get in your lifetime. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it might be something worth checking out at some point. I still think my ultimate games in terms of balance between visual novel and gameplay is the Zero Escape series. Absolutely. Because puzzles are my favorite. More so than like combat or anything like that. Being a stereotypical girl over here. And the story is so good in the Zero Escape series. You managed to go so far against one of your allies' beliefs and didn't spend any time trying to reconcile with them that they actually ended up on the enemy side in the final encounters, and you had to kill them, which meant that they did not return for the sequel. Wow. That is kind of nuts. That is pretty wild, for sure. He whispered his thoughts distantly, almost unconcerned with whether you could hear them or not.
That's...
They used to fight all the time. I think they got along when I was a baby. I mean, they had to have wanted to be with each other at some point, but when I was old enough to remember anything, it was already bad. There was always something wrong, and I could never help. I just wanted them to be happy. Aw. And that's not even the biggest you can affect the plot, just the biggest that you experienced. Wow. That's crazy. You tried to imagine your moms breaking up, and the very idea scared you, but Cove had endured that for real. I'm sorry.
Kate, don't worry about it.
Despite that revelation, Cove gazed reassuringly at you. It's not like that anymore. Things are so different now. I don't even really think about it. It's just this brought it up. Again, the sorrow reasserted itself. When he continued, you could barely hear him. Though, I guess it's pretty obvious I haven't forgotten either. We all have our traumas. Yes! Oh, well, a hug might be better at this point. Wait, hug him. You crossed the room, picking up a little bit of speed, and Cove's eyes widened. He shot out of the chair and stood waiting for you with a nonplussed look. When you collided into him, wrapping your arms around his middle and knocking the air out of his lungs, all mystery was gone, Cove squeaked. He returned the gesture longingly. Exhaling, you pressed your cheek into the warmth of his chest. The tension stuck inside you, released like a river, flowing into the ocean that was Cove. The firmness of his hug told you that Cove didn't plan on letting go anytime soon. You both needed the comfort and closeness for just a little bit longer. When he finally did, he kept hold of your hand. So cute, so wholesome. The two of you took a seat again, this time side by side on your bed.
Well...
Today was a lot, huh? Yeah, it was. Caress his hand. Now holding it with both of yours, your thumbs lightly brushed his skin as you admired it for a moment, and you laced your fingers with his again. Cove studied every move you made with a doting look. No matter what happens, we can make it work. If you play a mage in Dragon Age, it is actually very puzzle-esque, as spells are huge, sweeping battlefield changers, but have enough cooldown and weight to them that if you go ham too quickly, you lose. Okay, so very, strategy-based. His mouth pulled into a bent smile at that. You chuckled.
Me too.
He couldn't sit still anymore. Cove leaned in, delicately pressing his lips to your forehead, and he raised one free hand to lightly touch your jaw. The breath caught you in your throat. Oh, the breath got caught in your throat. When you remembered to breathe, blood rushed to your face, turning your skin a deep red. You tried not to think about how hot you were feeling, because after everything that happened today, you were just grateful for the moment. And for a while you stayed like that. A comfortable quiet fell between you, and the sun fell with it. The warming calm ended when Cove gasped sharply. You spun, half expecting to find him nursing an injury, but instead found him staring straight ahead. What?
Oh my god.
I think my phone just vibrated. Well, you better find out if it did. Right. You do have allies giving you room to breathe, but you, 1, need to not obliterate them, and 2, who you adventure with affects how people feel about you. That makes sense. Like, if you're running with a bunch of jerks, people are going to be like, oh, you are a jerk too. That makes sense. He patted his pockets, fumbling in his panic, and yanked the phone out. The force of the action nearly catapulted the device out of his grip entirely, but he caught it just in time. His eyes honed in on the screen. It's Terry, thank God. She says she's sorry. He looked back to you, eyes wide as his nerves started to fray once more. What should I say? Tell her to call us. Okay. He flashed you a shaky smile as he began to type. You suspected he'd had similar thoughts himself, but wanted the reassurance of a second opinion. Cove's phone buzzed nearly as soon as the message was sent. Ah, it's Terry again. She's talking to us. You leaned in, watching the conversation unfold on Cove's screen. She's gonna actually call. Cove held his breath as you waited. Though he was good with people, he had never been at ease managing conflict. His phone rang out. Cove jammed the answer button. He switched the phone into speaker mode, allowing you to participate in the conversation. But despite his immediate reaction, his voice lacked the same resolve when he spoke. Hey. It was tentative, a white flag fluttering in the wind. Kate is here too. Hey, Terry.
Hey.
Hey, buddies. What I mean is some members will get jealous of you. If A does not like B and you adventure with B, A's affection for you will drop. You can still take both as well, and much witty banter ensues between the two. Terry's voice was barely recognizable without her usual quick patter and energy.
Are you okay?
I don't know, probably not. Cove tensed, his free hand coiling into an anxious fist. Can you talk to us about what happened? You heard Terry sigh over the phone as she unburdened herself. Pretty much, I was at Randy's house. We decided to watch some movies she super liked that I'd never even seen before. Turns out there's a lot of those. We watched one and then another and another. We were having so much fun. Each time one finished, she had another one to share with me. I didn't really think about the time. I only wanted to say yes to Randy and watch her movies. She spoke wistfully, but her words were full of affection. It was Randy, you know. I wasn't thinking about my schedule or what time it was. Totally. Then I finally saw the time, and oh no, it was way too late. I already knew I couldn't stay. She took a deep breath, her voice becoming softer when she resumed talking. I was so stressed out, I just couldn't deal with it. Miranda wanted to help. She kept coming up with ways to make it better and trying to figure out why I was so upset and stuff. I was trying to answer her questions, there were so many, but I couldn't really answer all of them. I didn't even know why some of her ideas didn't work with me. It made my head ache. I still had the first problem, and Randy there, trying to help, blasting all these questions and suggestions at me faster than I could even think. She gulped, audibly, sniffing. I got frustrated and told her to just leave me alone, but then she wanted to talk about why I wanted that, and we started having a fight in the kitchen. It woke Randy's dad up. When we told him about how I wanted to go home, but my parents couldn't get me, so Mr. Eckert offered to do it. Problem solved? No, I mean, yes, kinda, but I accepted because I definitely couldn't stay then, not after throwing a racket and turning it into a big deal. But I feel awful and embarrassed. Why did I yell at Randy and hurt her feelings? And I made her dad lose sleep by waking him up and having to drive me home. What do you say after that? I have no idea. I don't know where to start, and I don't want to make it worse by saying the wrong thing and fighting again. So I'm not talking. Terry, Randy isn't mad that you didn't want to stay or that you fought. She just wants to feel like you can talk to her. I mean, you can say whatever you want. She'll listen. Not talking to her at all is pretty much the only wrong way to go about it. Terry lamented mournfully on the other end of the line, but he had a point. Unless she faced Miranda again, there would be no resolution. You looked at Cove, hunched over the phone, staring pensively into it and searching for a solution. This couldn't be solved with the other key party missing, but what if you brought them in? Your phone was still free. Suggested calling up Miranda now. I've got an idea. What if we called Miranda on my phone? Cove and I could make sure your conversation didn't fall off the rails. Cove brightened up. The concerned furrow in his brow, which had taken a root when Miranda first called, eased.
Well,
that could work. Terry, are you up for it? She made a noise that wasn't a word, but nevertheless conveyed her hesitation and worry. But she brought it to a close with a decisive exhalation as if pushing all negative thoughts from her body. All right, I'll do it. Cove nodded. Now that you've received approval from everyone, you pulled out your phone and called Miranda. You set it for speaker, waited for her to pick up. Luckily, she did.
Hi.
Hi, Kate. Her voice was still distant, as if her thoughts were elsewhere, but it was loud enough for your needs. Hi, you're on speaker. Terry's on speaker too, on Cove's phone. Oh. She paused while she digested that information. You watched the phone screen, hoping she wouldn't hang up as a result. Oh, really? Yep, it's really me. Can you hear my voice all the way from your house to theirs and then mine? I can. You and Cove exchanged looks, waiting for the wall between them to break, and wondering who would be the one to do it. As the quiet dragged on, you caught Cove chewing his cheek. He must have weighed up the same question as you, whether to encourage the conversation along or leave Miranda and Terry to resolve it themselves. The answer came in the form of one sniff, followed by another from Cove's phone. Sorry, Randy. I hope you still like me. What? You were the one acting as if you didn't like me. Her tone was defensive, no doubt a result of her wounds from last night still being raw. What? No way! Everyone likes Randy! You're wonderful! Your eyes met Cove's. His phone was tilted towards you, capturing the call indirectly. You moved your phone closer to his, hoping the signal was strong enough to convey every nuance of tone. Cove did likewise, bringing his cell right up to yours, even bumping against it as he shifted his grip. I didn't know what to say. That's the only reason I wouldn't talk to you. If I had known the answer, I would have told you right away. Miranda murmured on the other end of the line. You didn't want to stay. Anything I tried to do bothered you, and you could have told me you didn't know. Yeah, I think I was angry at myself. I did a dumb thing, and I didn't want help with it. I wanted to be mad and just deal with it myself. It made me keep doing dumb things. Oh. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, as tender and vulnerable as the words.
I'm sorry.
Staying up late watching stuff was all my fault. I had to find a way to fix it. That's what I thought anyway, but I should have given you space. I'm sorry for being so pushy and sensitive. Hardly. Miranda Eckert having a flaw? I've never heard of such a crazy thing. Miranda let out a ghost of a giggle. Cove cleared his throat. Maybe you should call each other now? Sorry. Can do. Thanks for giving me the kick in the butt to do this already. Randy, Mandy, I'm going to call you right now. Bye, Kate and Cove. She hung up after squeezing in another quick bye. though not giving you or Cove room to respond in kind. Miranda laughed, the noise tinkling gently like wind chimes in a summer breeze.
You're really nice.
Thanks for listening and helping. I'm gonna hang up now so I can answer Terry's call. Bye. Bye and good luck. Bye, you got this. Miranda hung up, still chuckling softly as your call ended. The room felt emptier without the other voices in it. Cove expelled a sigh that crashed through the newly fallen silence. Tension gone. He dropped his arms to his sides, letting his head hang down like a puppet at rest. Thank God. Content now that Cove seemed at ease again. Cove scratched at his face, his expression cloudy. I think I need to find better ways for dealing with conflict because that was awful. I think that would help. Cove meekly smiled as he rubbed at his eyes, weariness creeping over him, and he mumbled his next words. We can talk about it another day. Conflict resolution methods? Huh? Oh no, forget it. Your eyebrows rose and the light bulb went off in your head. Before Miranda called, didn't you say there was something you wanted to say? Cove's original visit had been thrown so off kilter that it was a struggle to wind your memory back to when he'd first turned up. Now that you did, you remembered he had been perky when he arrived this afternoon. Was it good news? Cove brushed his hand against his now folded arm shyly. Well, yeah, maybe. I'm not exactly sure it counts as news or even good. It just is what it is. I'm happy about it, though. Come on, no more hints. You gotta tell me now. Cove chuckled awkwardly, a hand creeping up to ruffle the hair on the back of his head. It's fine. If you want to hear, I can tell you. He shifted on his feet as if a different posture might give him the support he needed for the conversation. I didn't want to make it a big deal, but I kind of, well, not just kind of, I just know what my sexuality is now. Oh, a real subject change, huh? He chuckled. True, it was unexpected, but you were excited that Cove had come to understand himself more, and glad he wanted to share that with you. Aw, that's great, tell me. Cove drew a deep breath, straightening up. I'm demisexual, so, most of the time, I don't really have those kinds of feelings, physical wants and stuff. It's only in some situations, when I'm already really emotionally and romantically connected to someone, that I ever start to think about anything sexual, and it's only with them. I hadn't heard the term until pretty recently, and it just made a lot of sense once I knew what it meant. I had a word that fit how I felt.
Yeah.
And I'm pan-romantic, because I've never had a preference for a specific gender or anything, so yeah, that makes sense. Cove looked down at the floor, being so open and direct about a matter that personal, which you were sure he had spent a long time trying to figure out, seemed to be kind of weird for him. Despite that, there was a small proud smile on his face, and when he looked up again, his gaze was steadfast. Very different options here. This is kind of the neutral option. Yeah, we gon' push him. Does that mean you're thinking sexual things about me? Cove flushed and frowned equally hard at the statement. He struggled to get out a response. Yeah. What kinds of thoughts? Kate, you don't need to ask that. You weren't sure that was true, but couldn't help chuckling at how bashful he was. And no matter what, you wouldn't be getting a more explicit response than that right now. The topic was dropped. All this talk of Cove's sexuality made you reflect on your own. I don't remember what I had said when I was younger. There's a joke about sideways dancing here somewhere. Specifically when it came at how you felt towards men. You found them attractive, especially your boyfriend. And how you felt towards women. And how you felt towards NBs. He had always been supportive about the topic, listening actively and supporting you whatever conclusions you reached. It was heartwarming that he had reached a point where he felt similarly capable of discussing his own. Do people, like, actually talk about that, I guess? I don't know. It might be a little bit contrived because we're in a visual novel, but you felt his tiredness deep in the marrow of your bones. It had been a trying day. Now everything was neatly wrapped up, for today at least, and you had earned a rest. You had some good talks and come out of it not only knowing each other better, but yourself too.
Hey.
If a topic exists, someone has struggled with it. That's true. That's true. No, I mean, but like, coming over to tell your partner, I know what my sexuality is now. I guess, I don't know, it just seems weird. It's like, when it comes up, I guess. Hey, we should probably head downstairs soon. If your moms are still wanting everyone to get together. Yeah, that's right. With a renewed spring in your step, you led the way out of your room. You got downstairs to find the others already assembled and waiting.
Hi.
Depends how much thought the person has come into it. Yeah, I guess. Hello. Hey, good to see you both.
Hey!
In fact, the tougher it is, the closer the person has to be to talk about it. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I remember when I came out as bisexual, which was like in college, I only told like a few people. And one of those people was T-Bone, who then ended up being my boyfriend. But it was something that I didn't normally share with people because I kind of was like, it didn't really matter because I was in a straight relationship. And, you know, T-Bone and I have been together for like 12 years. So, and I kind of sat on it for a long time, and then I finally came out to kind of the world on social media, I think in like 2016, 2017, something like that. Just to be like, hey, this is a thing. It doesn't really affect anything, but, you know, I guess it was one of those things where I had read that if everyone came out of the closet, that the struggle for gay rights would essentially end because there's so many people and everybody probably knows someone that they care about who is somewhere on LGBT plus. And so I was like, well, that seems like a good principle, and I guess if I believe in that, then I should come out. And I did, and people were supportive. I actually got no negative feedback, and that was the end of that. That's why it's such a big deal. Companionship matters. Yeah. Yeah, I only, when I was first kind of figuring things out in college, I only told like a handful of people kind of when it came up. It's yeah, I guess it's something that I feel weird talking about unless it comes up naturally in conversation. And part of that might be because, you know, it's sometimes as a bisexual woman in a straight relationship, you can kind of feel like a fraud or like, like you don't have enough points to talk about it or like to claim that identity. So yeah, it gets weird. Anyway, gatekeeping, basically. Yeah, I worry about gatekeeping. And especially when, you know, biphobia already kind of exists and is out in the world with both straight people and gay people, and so... And it's also, you know, it's kind of like, does it matter? It's kind of, it's also just kind of like my business, right? The reason why, and I probably could have sat on it forever, but like I said, the reason I came out about it was I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anybody in my life or in my circle who was feeling, you know, homophobic or biphobic. And I wanted them to realize, like, yeah, that's me. So be aware of, you know, what your positions and what your voting and stuff affects. Even if only kind of hypothetically, because like I said, straight relationship, so. Hi. Here we are, trying to corral everyone into a group, but the two of you were already upstairs this whole time. Of course we were together. You paid Kate to stick with me, or did you forget? The statement was meaningless to your family, who looked to each other for answers in vain. Mr. Holden, who got the message loud and clear, seemed embarrassed. He chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Ouch, son, you always know when to remind me of that one. Uh-huh, can't let you live it down yet. Can we hear exactly what the secret is? The suspense is killing us.
Right.
Alright, I better get everyone up to speed. It's been 10 years! And they never found out, I guess. He held up his hands, palms out, pacifying his audience, or perhaps holding them up as a shield in advance. The first day I met Kate, I'd been worrying about Cove being alone for the summer.
Well...
There weren't a lot of kids around, and he wasn't exactly on the best terms with me at the time. He glanced around at your family, gauging the responses. I felt like this was my one shot, so I kind of offered her $20 to be friends with Cove, and added that she couldn't tell him about it. Liz gasped. Ma was staring incredulously at Mr. Holden, while Mom's eyebrows had retreated into her hairline. You and Cove, already knowing the story, were the only ones unaffected. But after a while, I really did honestly forget it even happened. He raised his hands higher, now level with his shoulders. Not a bad idea, you thought. If Mom felt inclined to throw a cushion at him, he'd probably manage to block it in time. I know that's bad, but I've had so many grand ideas over the years, it's hard to keep track of them all. Cove smiled, placing his hands on his hips and shaking his head at his father's antics.
Seriously?
I can't believe you, though also I totally can. Your moms were less indulgent. The shock had ebbed away to displeasure. Mom's foot was tapping rapidly as she frowned at the next-door neighbor, while Ma had her arms crossed over her chest and her lips pursed. I'm sorry, Kate, and I'm sorry to your parents, too. That was way out of bounds. Don't worry about it. Everything worked out. Your moms gave each other that look, where they seemed to communicate with eyes alone. All right, well, that's that then, and it won't happen again.
Absolutely.
It definitely won't. Good. It was a little surprising they were letting him off the hook, but on the other hand, it was a long time ago now, and you were sure your moms remembered those painful early days of Coe's arrival, too. Mr. Holden wasn't a potential bad influence anymore, so a lecture would be pretty moot. Instead, your ma gave him a lenient smile.
In that case?
Now that it's settled, why don't we find something to do? Nods of agreement cascaded through the group in a couple of waves at the suggestion. Mr. Holden's shoulders slumped with the release of tension. He brought his hands down, tucking them away into his pockets. How about cards? There was a murmur of interest from the others. Fine. Most of the group was eager to play, but Mr. Holden was demurring.
Nah.
I think I'll sit this one out. Where's the fun in that? Join in. We're not too angry with you. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people, but we can make it work. Mr. Holden shrunk into himself, embarrassed by their attention. Dad, you love playing cards. We do it at our house all the time. You have achieved verticality. You, erected your house? That's good. Coe's right. Remember that time I played over there? We played for real, for cold, hard cash. Dad? Mr. Holden broke under the combined force of everyone's attention. Cove and Kate, you're adults now. You deserve to know the truth. I used to throw the card game so you could win. I put up a good fight, but I always made sure to lose a lot more rounds than I won. You finally managed to construct a working staircase to your second floor. Yay! He toyed with the end of his ponytail, clearly distressed at the second great secret he was revealing today. I know people want to be taken seriously, and fake wins don't mean as much, but I couldn't help myself. It's so much better when everyone else got the chance to be victorious. Kira knew as much and went along with it. Clove laughed in disbelief that this was the thing his dad stressed out about hiding, after all the other stunts he'd pulled over the years. So what? Lots of parents do that. I hadn't guessed it, sure, though looking back it makes sense. That's right, what's the big deal, Cliff? You can finally take the kid gloves off and give them a run for their money. Maybe even actual money in your case. Mr. Holden smiled coyly, his gaze lowering. I'm not sure that's a good idea. And why not? He waved his hands expansively, the movements fluid and vague. It's just, actually, I am something of a card shark. I used to make lots of fast cash off games. Casual players don't have a shot unless it's a game of pure luck. Cove's jaw hung open, his wide eyes fixed on his father. Really? There was a touch of amazement, even admiration, nestled among the shock. The other members of the Letters family exchanged looks, ranging from Liz's disbelief to Mom's intrigue, with Ma somewhere in the middle between the two. You can't simply make a claim like that and expect us to go along with it. Let's see you back it up, Shark Man. Mr. Olin gave a crooked smile, his demureness quickly being replaced with the confidence of someone very skilled or very misguided. You sure about that? Definitely. We gotta see this so-called non-casual player in action. Well, I might be able, though who knows, maybe I've gotten rusty. His coyness continued to rile the gang up, and he was getting a kick out of it now.
Alright.
I can dust off the old tricks. Don't go easy on us. Cove beamed at his father, while Mom clapped Mr. Holden on the back. Liz darted off to get a deck of cards, while the rest of you settled in for the game. Hands were dealt, and Mr. Holden wasted no time proving his words were true, wiping the floor with all of you. You played several rounds, even switching games, but none of you were a match for him. That's how the alliance came to be forged. The rest of you joined forces against Mr. Holden only, just trying to increase the odds of beating him. Arch enemy. With your combined efforts, you pulled out a few victories, yet it was still a challenge. He was clearly a professional. If these were his skills now, rusty with disuse, you couldn't even imagine what a deadly opponent he had been in the past. Despite that, you still had fun. Working cooperatively actually fostered a sense of camaraderie with the others. Mr. Holden didn't appear fazed by this strategy. You actually wondered whether this increased challenge made it more interesting for him. You spent the rest of the afternoon together with your family and the Holdens, having fun. It was an interesting evening for sure, with many discoveries for everyone. It was freeing, yet simultaneously you felt more tied together than you had been before. Ah. We gonna save again. And, I think I'm gonna get a snack really quickly. Yeah. It's snack time. Back in like 30 seconds or something. The true final boss for your house, birch tree that's growing right where you want the corner of it to be. You lack the tools to penetrate its bark? Dang. That's unfortunate. Oh my god, it's really dry. It's getting stuck to the roof of my mouth. Yeah, I guess there were 3 different talks in that segment. It was the fight with the friends, it was the sexuality talk, and then it was the reveal of the payment. Like a lazy cat, you stretched your arms above your head and yawned, blinking your eyes sleepily. The day was warm and pleasant, and you were lounging on the couch in the living room, finding it difficult to do much in that moment. Your moms and Liz had gone out shopping, looking for some new items for your sister to take back and decorate her college dorm with. They had asked if you wanted to go with them, but you declined. For you, today was all about relaxation. Cope had dropped by to spend some time with you, content to join in with doing nothing. The two had been chatting idly as you lazed around, talking about the other things you had planned for the summer. Stretched out across him as he sat on the couch. You had your feet propped up on one of the armrests and used Cove as a comfy cushion beneath your head, totally settled in. Cove gently wound his fingers through your hair as you rested on his legs, quite equally at ease. The day dragged on. You found yourself still yawning more and more often between conversations. You'd almost dozed off completely when suddenly a buzz rang out, disturbing the silence. Your phone was on its charger in the kitchen, so it couldn't have been that. Cove pulled his own phone from his back pocket and checked the screen. Its movement had jostled you, so you tried to readjust your position to get it right again. Oh! After leaning forward and setting the phone on the coffee table in front of him, Cove hit the speaker button. Hey, what's up? Kate is here too.
Hi.
Oh, I like her hair now. Hi, Cove. Hello, Kate. Kira! What? Why? Cove, baby, I wanted to ask if you have a plan for all your junk. Cove made a small, outraged grumble, giving you a sidelong glance. That's not junk, it's important. Mm-hmm. Though you couldn't see it, you could tell by the sound of her voice that Kira was smiling. But is that a yes or no about the plan? He looked over at you, his mouth pulled into a tight smile. I'm still thinking about it. Kate. I'm gonna take the phone off speaker so me and Mom can go over this. It'll be quick. Uh-oh. Is he gonna move back in with Mom for a little bit? Away from me? Cove carefully moved you off him and took the phone from the table before pushing himself to his feet. He hit the speaker button again to turn it off and continued the conversation with his mom as he headed toward the door. The lock clicked behind him as he exited the house, and you sank back onto the cushions, idly trying to decide what to do next. After electing to grab your own phone from its charger, you resumed your position on the couch, tapping away at the screen. Your mind drifted away from thoughts of Cove and his phone call with all the many ways your device could distract you. It was an effective way to kill time, and you had managed to do various little things when the door opened again and Cove returned. He gave you a smile as he approached, so you figured the conversation couldn't have gone too bad. You watched as Cove strolled over to where you were still sitting. He crossed his arms against the top corner of the couch, resting on them while bending forward to lightly kiss the top of your head.
Hey.
I'm back. Tilted head, giving him a small kiss. He met your lips with his, closing his eyes and let you kiss him longer than the one he'd just given prior. So good news or bad news? He turned his head suddenly, running a hand through his hair and letting out an exasperated breath. He seemed nervous, but you couldn't imagine why. Nothing to worry about. You raised an eyebrow at his tone, moving your head to the side to try to meet his eye. That doesn't explain what's going on. He shrugged and gave you a tight smile, trying to play whatever it actually was off as unimportant. There's nothing going on, just stuff I can deal with later, some other time. What are you hiding from me, Cove? He was transparently avoiding the truth, and you stared back at him seriously, an indication that you weren't going to ignore what he was doing. Eventually, he broke beneath your stare, hanging his head in his hands and groaning. I need to make another trip to my mom's place. There's some stuff out there that I'm going to use, so I have to go pick it up. It would make sense to ship it, and I couldn't bring the stuff back with me last time since I flew. Oh. Suddenly you understood what the phone conversation had been about. Cove was going to drive to his mom's house in Nevada. When will you go? Mom thinks it's best to do it now while I'm still kind of free, but Cove pouted, giving you an unhappy look. You could see the prospect was already taking a toll on him. I don't want to. I was just there, and for even longer than usual. Why do I have to leave right now when it's our last summer like this? Road trip! Road trip! Road trip! Thought it was cute, he wanted to say. Showed how much he appreciated being there and spending time with you. Looking up again, you met his bright aquamarine eyes, finding a sad smile tugging on his lips. Oh, suddenly his eyebrows jumped and his eyes lit up like a lamp. I could come with you! You could come with me! What? You should come with me. I mean, I get that the two of us live next door to each other, and my mom lives in another state. My trips there are usually to spend time with her, just the two of us. But this time it won't be like that. All I'm going to do is drive over, stay for a night, and then pack up the car in the morning and turn around again. Most of the time will be spent in the car, so it'd be good to have another person there. Plus, you'd even have the chance to see my mom again and her place. Maybe we could even find something cool to break at on the way. You couldn't stop yourself from laughing at his enthusiasm. He blushed a little, reining himself in.
Please?
I just feel like it could be fun. Please, could you think about it? This is so cute! I'd love to. When do we leave? I'll have to let my moms know, but as long as we've got nothing else important on the days we pick, there's no reason I wouldn't be able to go. He grinned from ear to ear, thrilled by the news. He put both his hands on your cheeks, kissing your face all over, having to bend far down to do so. But he didn't mind it a bit. Then he wrapped his arms around your neck, letting out a happy sigh. This is so great! I'll call my mom back and let her know right now. You spent some time together going over your schedules and making plans for when you could take the trip. You needed to fit it around Cove's work schedule, which he brought up on his phone to double check. Luckily, it was only a 2-day trip, so finding a couple free days in a row wasn't impossible. It wasn't long before the dates were finally set and all the plans were made. Excited for the trip. Short trips sound like the perfect way to spend some time. You could listen to music, eat snacks, and enjoy the open road. No matter what you thought about things, the morning when you were due to leave arrived. It was cooler than usual, the sun barely peeking over the tops of the houses. You stood outside your house, on the footpath near the road, waiting for Cove. You were feeling refreshed after a good night's sleep and an early wake-up. With your travel bag clutched in one hand, you watched as Cove finished packing up his car. He had organized all sorts of things, water bottles, snacks, and who knows what else. Cove insisted he had everything under control and didn't need help. At least you could rest easy, knowing that it was all taken care of. As you waited, you glanced over Cove's car. You knew it well. It used to belong to Mr. Holden, and when Cove had learned to drive it, it passed to him. His dad had taken the opportunity to get a newer one. It was pretty old at this point, but it served both of them well so far. You just hoped that it had enough life left in it to survive a trip as long as the one you were embarking on. Oh God. Whew! So, everything is fine. I'm just having like a little bit of a flashback to a time when I took a road trip and the car died like 2 hours from where we needed to be and 2 hours away from home. And it was awful. But it's okay and it's in the past and it can't hurt me now. The slam of a door closing made you jump. You snapped back to focus and saw Cove was walking towards you. He dusted his hands off of his pants and tilted his head toward the car. That's it, ready to go? Yep, I'm ready. He smiled and stepped aside, giving you space to situate your own bag where you wanted it. Once everything was safely inside, he glanced back at you.
All right.
We should get started. It's going to be a ways to go. Give him a high five. He returned it happily, chuckling at your enthusiasm. The two of you climbed into the car and buckled up. Cove in the driver's seat, you sitting shotgun. His eyes moved to
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming on this trip with me. Hey, I'm doing this for me too. It'll be fun. After checking the mirrors and starting the engine, you pulled out of the driveway and the trip began. With a small sigh, you got cozy in your seat and watched the familiar houses in your neighborhood pass by. Cove reached over to turn on the radio. A crackle of static mixed with odd snippets of song filled the car as he flipped through the stations. Mr. Holden's car was in good condition, but it was, well, older. There was no way to plug in a phone to play music, so the radio had to do. Calm down over there. Eventually, he settled on a classic rock station before sitting back and resting both hands on the wheel. Is this okay? Classic rock. He smiled, happy with the answer. Time flew by, and with it, the scenery outside your window became more and more unfamiliar. Neither of you spoke for a good long while, but the quiet was comfortable. You'd become all too used to each other's company over the years. Eventually, Cove broke the silence, clearing his throat softly before he spoke. It's been too long since you and I spent some time with my mom. I know she still comes to the neighborhood sometimes, but it's not even once a year. I'm always going to hers. I'm happy the two of us are doing this. Yeah, me too. Your elbow resting on the windowsill, you gazed out at a world that was slowly coming to life as the morning rolled on by. The sun climbed higher in the sky, forcing you to adjust the visor overhead to keep it out of your eyes. Hey, do you mind reaching back for me? Cove gave you a sidelong glance as he drove, indicating with a nod of his head and a tiny smile. I want some chips, the salt and vinegar ones, because he is a man of taste. That's a great flavor, right? Eat whatever you want, too. I bought a bunch of everything. Stretching out the seatbelt to give yourself space, you twisted in your spot and reached back into the bag holding the snacks. It took a bit of effort to sort through the collection of goodies stuffed inside, but eventually the bag of chips crinkled beneath your fingers as you pulled them out and sat back in your seat. Here. Thanks. Do you mind opening it? His eyes lit up at the prospects of the snacks, and you shook your head in amusement, popping the top of the bag. Want me to feed them to you? It's probably safer. His eyes widened, the hint of a blush creeping over his cheeks, but he steadfastly continued to face the road. No, that's okay. Can you just pour a few into my hand? I'm supposed to have both hands on the wheel, sir. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Cove held out his one outstretched hand. You did your best to have the chips fall into his palm, but some did end up on the floor. After that, you rolled up the top of the bag and stowed the chips safely in the back again. When you turned to the front, it was to find Cove crushing the fistful of chips into his mouth, crunching loudly. He wiped his hands on his pants absentmindedly before gripping the wheel and spilling crumbs all over the place. You know, as much as I've tried to kind of make the main character be sort of like me, I feel like Cove is me. Cove is me, but as a boy. Laughed at it. Couldn't stop the amused sound that escaped you, and when Cove raised a questioning eyebrow, you simply shook your head. The hours drifted by much the same way as that, with the two of you snacking and chatting as the day stretched on. It was fairly calm and quiet, traveling along the open road, and you found little in the way of interruptions. At one point, you passed a Welcome to Nevada sign, and Cove gave a tiny cheer. He was in disbelief that the two of you were seriously all the way in another state like this. Eventually, you had to stop for gas, and made a detour at a small diner to grab a proper meal that didn't consist of chips and candy. We didn't pack food? Okay, maybe Cove isn't like me. After refueling both the car and your stomachs, the drive was back on, just as the sun began dipping beneath the horizon and bathing in the sky a wash of orange light. Cove informed you there wasn't too much longer left to go. You were almost there. When night eventually fell in a blanket of darkness, the drive finally came to an end. Cove pulled into the parking lot of Kira's apartment building, the glow of the car lights disappearing as he turned off the engine and let out a heavy sigh. We made it! We're here! And he drove the entire time. The two of you exchanged tired smiles, having successfully and safely completed one half of the trip. You were relieved to have actually arrived, and eager to get out of the car and stretch your legs. You took the stairs up to the building together. After a knock, you were abruptly met by a flash of green hair as Kira opened the door and immediately took her son in her arms.
Cove.
There he is, my gigantic baby boy! She squeezed him for a moment and then pulled back so that she could examine his face. Are you even taller than the last time I saw you? Cove gave her a fond look as she patted the tops of his shoulders proudly. You say that every time I'm here. It doesn't even make sense right now. My last visit wasn't that long ago. Kira simply laughed before letting him go fully and ushering the two of you into her apartment. Then she turned to you, a wide grin pulling at her lips. Kate, so nice to see you came along with, and as a bonus, you both arrived in one piece. It's good to see you, Kira. It's been too long. Kira beamed at you both, and while you would have loved nothing more than to settle down and rest after the drive, you could see she wasn't going to let you go that easily. So how was the trip? I admit I was just a pinch worried. Let Cove answer. It was fine, no problems for us. Kira clapped her hands together, the bracelets around her wrists jingling. I'm so proud. I can hardly believe how mature you both are. Where did all those smarts come from? Cove ran a hand over his hair with an awkward chuckle. I don't know. Maybe I got some from my parents. His mom looked up at him deeply, her eyes glistening as she shook the sentimentality off with another wave of her hand. You have to be half asleep already, huh? I don't want to keep you up much longer. Early morning at any whoosies. How do you want to deal with sleeping arrangements? I've only got my own room in Cove's, though the living room couch isn't bad. Kate can use my bed. I'll sleep in the floor in the room. It doesn't matter for one night. Kira laughed out loud, startling you both. You raised an eyebrow at her outburst, giving her a quizzical look. Oh yeah, you'll just stay on the floor. You couldn't handle that much back when you were 13 with both your parents in the room. Cove blushed a dark red and gasped, and gaped, completely unprepared for her to pull out that embarrassing moment from the past. Remember in the RV? That was hilarious. Her laughter continued unabated. Hi, Vasco. Yeah, wrecked, right? You're gonna be driving tomorrow. You really want to risk another potential head injury? Look at that absolute mom grin. Absolutely.
Hey!
Mom. That mom grin could overthrow kings. Put a hand on Cove's arm to show support. He gave you a grateful smile, and Kira cooed at the two of you. Mom, she finally let it drop and you tried to move on. I'll sleep on the couch in the living room. Cove shook his head, dismissing the idea immediately.
No.
You're the guest. I don't want to take your bed. Well, I still don't want to take it from you, and I said it first. Two of you narrowed eyes at each other stubbornly. Kira took that as her cue to step in. Sort of grin you can't even Ultra Instinct to avoid. Aw, I hope you feel better soon, Vasco. Yeah, isn't it just like, oh, some nice warm sugar to kind of brighten your day, hopefully. My house, my rules, and you know who I have to side with. I'd like you to take the bed, Kate. You hesitated a moment, but it seemed you had to accept the hospitality. With a small sigh, you gave in. All right, cool.
So...
You want to take his bed, but PG-13 stream. So would you be okay with me sleeping on the floor in the room? I'd rather be there than out in an open living room, even if there is a couch. Yeah, you can sleep there, whatever you want. Kira giggled softly, drawing your attention back to her. All funny stuff aside, you need to get some sleep for tomorrow. Seems like you're setting yourselves up to not get any. I know that sounds really captious, but I'm a mom. I have to say these things. Come on, we're not little kids having a sleepover. We're responsible adults, right, Kate? Well, I am Cove, though. Cove is, though I can't say the same for myself. Or maybe you should sleep in the living room after all. I say yes, very responsible. She gave the two of you a suspicious look, and you stood up straighter, trying to prove your point. I'll leave it at that then, for now. Just remember the walls are thin in this apartment. If you can't settle down and sleep, I might have to separate you. We'll be good. Perfect. Kira clasped her hands together, her bracelets softly tinkling against each other again. It's only getting later, so I better let you prepare for bed. She nodded toward the hallway and gave you a small smile. I'll play hostess for a sec and show you where the bathroom is first, Kate, and where you'll be staying the night. Thank you. You hoisted your travel bag over your shoulder and followed behind Kira down the hallway. Cove shuffled along behind you, disappearing into the bedroom while his mom had you go to the restroom. The apartment was small, but nicely decorated in soft, cool colors, with plenty of artwork hanging on the walls to give it character. It was stylish, and exactly what you would have expected from someone like Kira. After being shown the bathroom and wishing Kira good night, you headed into the room and found Cove already there. He changed into his sleepwear for a night as well, and set aside his glasses already. Looking around, you found the bedroom to look much the same as the rest of the apartment, but with small ocean elements you were sure Cove must have enjoyed while he stayed there. After all, all in all, the room was pretty and clean, though it almost looked more like a hotel guest room than a bedroom. I was kind of thinking that. Cove only spent a few weeks out of the year there, so it made sense that it wasn't especially lived in.
So?
What do you think? It's pretty nice, huh? Mom always keeps it clean and everything, even when I'm not here. That's sweet of her. Yeah, she's good like that. He seemed pleased enough with the response and gave you a small smile before opening the zip on his bag. When you went back to the room, you jumped in bed and under the covers, just as Cove was shuffling into his sleeping bag on the floor. You waited until he was settled in before you flipped off the lights, and a soft glow from outside peeked through the blinds, casting shadows over the floor. You closed your eyes, blocking everything out.
Right.
Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite. The room grew quiet as the two of you wound down for the night, and you found yourself listening to the sounds of the city outside the window. The noise out there was so different to what you were used to back home, cars zooming past and people out having fun, instead of crashing waves and ocean winds cocooning your house in their embrace. Cove shifted around in his sleeping bag, making the fabric crinkle loudly. I've outgrown this thing. I should have checked it earlier, but the trip was kind of short notice. Why don't we share? It's big enough. It is. Cove inhaled deeply, the fabric of his sleeping bag crinkling loudly as he fidgeted beneath. I told my mom I was going to stay on the floor. You frowned, wondering when that had ever stopped him before. Did you really plan on going through with that?
Yeah.
No! He hesitated a little, the silence stretching between you. You couldn't help but smile to yourself. You knew him well. The sleeping bag rustled again, and through the dim light you saw him stand and head toward the bed. Hey! He took in a deep breath as he ran his hands across the top of the blanket, gathering nerves as he met yours. And then he paused, head tilted to the side as if silently asking permission. Well, what are you waiting for? You shuffled over to make room for him as he pulled the bedding up and crawled beneath the covers, leaving the two of you close together, but not quite touching. He exhaled a heavy breath as he laid down on his side, his head getting comfy on the pillow next to yours. You smiled softly through the dark, thinking it felt good to have him so close. You felt better when he was around. He raised his fingers and delicately brushed the tips over your cheeks, drawing a shaky sigh from your lips. His touch was warm and feather-light, making you feel tingly all over. When his eyes met yours again, you found yourself lost in them, the world becoming still and silent around you. Do you hear that? That's the sound of 10,000 fanfic shipwriters cheering at the same time, right? Then he froze, his muscles tensing as he closed up like a clam and his breath hitched in his throat. He attempted to whisper something, but it was completely lost on you. With that having to suffice as warning, Cove jumped out of the bed and crouched down on the floor, his head held in his hands as he took in a few deep, stuttering breaths. You bolted upright in bed, staring down at him with a mixture of alarm and amusement. Are you okay?
I'm always like this.
I thought it would feel like it did before when we were younger, but it's different now. I'm sorry. Oh no. I'm sorry, Kate. Really sorry. I'm just so... He panted deeply in and out as though he had finished running an entire marathon. I guess he can't handle the attraction or something? After finally steadying his breathing down to a normal rhythm, he crawled back into his sleeping bag and huddled down on the floor, his back turned to you. Sorry. Oh. My poor boy. Cold feet. Well, no, I think I don't think he is ready to do anything yet. We're only 18, and he's not ready. But I think he was just kind of, poor thing. I'll say it's kind of flattering. It's very clear how much of an impact you had on him. Yeah, that's what cold feet is. Yeah, I guess. Well, I think he was saying that he thought it would just be like when we were kids, but it's not because we're grown up now. So I don't know if that counts as cold feet if he wasn't intending to do anything in the first place. I'm not surprised that this happened again. Damn. You don't need to apologize. He made a small noise acknowledging he had heard you, but said no more. With the event over, you laid back down in bed alone for this night. The next day dawned, bringing with it the sounds of birds chirping happily outside the window. You opened your eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the light as you tried to recall where you were, and remembering the unfamiliar sight of Cove's second bedroom. I'd woken up on my own. The early morning sun filtered through the blinds, telling you it was about time to get out of bed and start getting ready for the day. The sound of Cove shuffling around the room drew your attention, though you weren't surprised. He had always been a morning person. Sitting up in bed, you let out a yawn and stretched your arms above your head. Felt okay. Considering the long drive the day before and the late night, you were feeling ready to get the day started. It's always weird sleeping in a new place. Though you weren't as perky as him, his energy was infectious. Good morning. You pulled yourself out of bed, grabbing a fresh change of clothes and your toiletries before heading to the bathroom. After all that, you met Cove back in his room. He was sitting on the floor when you entered, sorting through a bunch of stuff in a box, determining what to bring and what to leave behind. Hey. Hey, can you pull out the stuff in those drawers? You nodded, though he hadn't even looked up from his task, so you knew he wouldn't have seen. Heading over to his drawers, you started the task of taking out various items and setting them on the ground in front of Cove. After a while, it became clear to you that Cove was acting strange whenever you went near him. He was flinching over your presence. Don't feel awkward! We've been dating for like years! It's okay! It happened a few more times before you couldn't take the awkwardness any longer. You dropped the stuff you were holding down in front of him and raised a questioning eyebrow. Is everything okay?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about last night, again. He quietly squeaked the second part of his thought. About not staying in the bed with you. I know you try not to mind or be mad at me, but I wish I didn't have to make you accept me backtracking all the time. He swallowed thickly, struggling to find the right words to explain himself. I do think it felt nice, really, really. It's just also not bad, but good in an inconvenient way.
I mean,
Laying together like that, being so close, it gets too hot, you know? His cheeks flushed with color, and he immediately trailed off, his eyes firmly fixed on the floor. He looked away for a minute, and Cove became a bird. Nevada is weird. Damn! I don't know if I want to be that. That's mean. Just gonna nod in acceptance. It's whenever he wants to do stuff. He let out a fractured chuckle. Thanks, Kate. If you're all right, then let's get back to packing. I don't want to actually bring you down by not shutting up about it. With it more or less resolved, you went to grab some more items as Cove focused on the box in front of him once again. Oh, ... Oh, hey, look at this. When you turned toward the sound of Cove's voice, you found him digging through one of the drawers beneath the bed.
neat.
Here's something I definitely need to bring. Neat. Craning your head, you got a better glimpse of what he was holding. A small stack of papers. You immediately recognized the handwriting as your own. Those are the letters you had sent him when he was away. I had mentioned that I sent letters, so they remembered. He kept them the whole time. Started to feel emotional. Cove looked up at you as you sniffled quietly, seeming concerned. You wiped away the tears that were building in your eyes, feeling a little silly. Sorry. He smiled at you, his face softening. Why would you apologize? It's all right. It's wonderful. Thank you.
It's nice.
These are special. It was important having a piece of you with me when we were apart. I feel the same way. That's why I gave them to you. Cove smiled, pleased that the feeling was mutual, but then the expression became more amused. And did you keep the souvenirs I brought back? Of course. His grin grew to completion. Thanks. Another hour passed by in silence, and you were happy to see that you were making great progress with Cove's room, with only the closet left to sort through. You took a minute to take a mouthful of water from your bottle and perched on the edge of the bed, feeling more productive. Cove glanced over at you and paused, putting down a tape gun he had been using to seal up his boxes. You raised an eyebrow. You know, it's really strange to see you sitting in this room. Why? He frowned a little, with his eyes distant and his voice quiet when he spoke next.
That's...
During the visits to Mom's, when I was sitting alone in this room, I'd sometimes think about how you weren't here. It was a weird feeling at the time that you just weren't around, and now that you are here, in this exact place, I don't know how to explain the feeling. He shrugged it off and smiled a little, as though he had said enough already and didn't want to risk sounding silly. Life is pretty confusing, is all. I missed you so much when you were gone. His brows crinkled at you solemnly, his eyes bright with emotion. I missed you too, all the time. It made you feel better to know that somehow, to know that when you were stuck at home missing his company, he was missing yours also. He looked away satisfied, heading over to the closet, and the last of the items to be sorted. Before long, every box, closet, and drawer had been thoroughly combed through, with the items either neatly packed up in boxes or organized and returned to their proper place. With a sigh of relief, you glanced around the bedroom and the work you had done together.
all right.
We're done. Good job to us. I'm going to change out of my PJs for the drive. Yeah. When the two of you headed out into the living room, ready to get everything finalized and hit the road, you found Kira in the kitchen pouring a cup of tea. Cove headed toward her, leaning casually against the counter that divided the two spaces. Hey, you didn't have to get up so early. Are you crazy? Of course I have to see you off before you go. You can't sneak away while I'm out cold. She beamed at him, and in all honesty, seemed to be more than happy to be up and getting ready for the day. Do you want some breakfast? I've got some, muesli or eggs and toast. Oh, and some of that fruity cereal you used to love. That's okay, we should really eat on the road. Kira smiled sadly, a little disappointed, but she seemed to understand that your time was running thin. I thought you might say that. In that case, I packed you some snacks for the road. Even if you don't end up eating them, take it anyway, just in case. You can always feed them to Cliff when you get home, and tell him I said hi. Cove laughed and shook his head, knowing his dad would love nothing more than to polish off whatever food Kira had prepared for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. You really didn't have to. I'll definitely eat whatever you packed. Better save some for me, too. Kira giggled, hiding her mouth behind her hand. There's plenty of it there for both of you. She returned your smile with one of her own, before putting her cup of tea aside. Well, I'll help you get the car packed.
Sure.
Thanks. The three of you got a move on, taking the boxes from Cove's bedroom and heading down to fill the back seat of the car until there was barely an inch of space left in the back of the trunk. With all of you helping, it only took a couple of trips to move everything, and with you done before you were done before you knew it. Then it was truly time to say goodbye. You convened back inside the apartment, where Kira looked over the two of you with a quiet smile. It was great to see you both. Thank you for coming. She gave you each a hug, and you felt a little sad that you hadn't been able to spend more time with her. It was good to see you, Mom. Or good to see you too, Mom. Cove embraced her in return, and the two of them holding on to each other for a few seconds longer. I'll miss you, but I'll visit again soon. Hydrate. Feel like I'm starting to stumble over my words because my mouth is dry.
Of course.
You better. Hey, we should make plans for you to visit us too. I'll let you know when it's settled. I'd love that. Kira bundled all the stuff she prepared into a bag and handed them over to you. You took a quick peek at what she had packed. There were fruits, nuts, seeds, hard-boiled eggs, and some veggie sticks.
Cool.
Yes. Oh, good. See, we've got some fresh food options now. The snacks I brought weren't. Kira shook her head at him and let out a soft laugh, as though she wouldn't have expected anything else. I seriously hope you're feeding yourself better than that at home. Yeah, of course, just not on trips. I can live with that then. She looked over him fondly, her eyes at last focusing on his face and filling with emotion. I'm gonna miss you, baby.
Me too.
Thank you for letting us come. No problem at all. You're welcome anytime. Kira put an arm around you both, pulling you in tight to her sides for one final squeeze. Have a safe trip. We will. With a last goodbye, you exited the apartment, though Cove hesitated for a moment in the door, his expression distant. You weren't sure what he was doing, though you tentatively took a step toward him. Everything okay? Your voice seemed to bring him back to the earth, and he shook his head to clear his thoughts, his green hair swinging from side to side. Yeah, let's go. With that, the two of you headed back down to the car, ready to make the long trip home. Soon enough, you were on the wide open road, the car full of Cove's things, and only one destination, Sunset Bird, California. The drive went as smoothly as could be expected, with the morning slowly creeping into midday as the miles flew by. The day flew by in a whir of open road and sunshine, and before you knew it, it was early afternoon. By that point, you'd already crossed the state line. Cove announced that he planned a little stop on the way home. Ooh. So you lied, saying that we only had one destination, narrator. He was quite pleased with himself as you arrived at the precipice. The Redwood National Park! Oh, remember that time we went to the Redwood National Park? Shaded beneath the canopy of enormous redwood trees, you drove along. When Cove parked the car, you pushed the door to get out. The first thing you did was look up. Enormous redwood trees surrounded you on all sides, their massive trunks shooting straight up into a canopy of foliage overhead. There were too many of them to count, stretching on and on as far as you could see. You squinted against the sunlight that was peeking through the leaves and dancing on the paths around you. It's great, right? He smiled at you from over the roof of the car before glancing around the place fondly. Remember the trip our families took here that one summer? It was cool going on a journey and seeing the forest in person, even if we didn't stay for very long. And I guess we can stay for even less this time, but oh well. It just seemed like a good time to stop by. Who knows when we'll get another chance? His voice got a little softer at the end. It seemed to be bittersweet for him, being in a place he was so fond of, but not having the time to appreciate it fully. Pleased to have stopped here. It's a beautiful place to stretch your legs and take in some fresh air. There'll be more chances in the future, I promise. Cove smiled, shoving his hands in his pockets and tipping his head. I'm gonna hold you to that. The two of you walked around for a while, completely dwarfed by the sheer scale of the redwoods. It kind of put your view of yourself and everything in a strange perspective. You took in a lungful of clean forest air, listening to the sounds of birdsong and the cool breeze rustling through the underbrush, taking advantage of the space to move around freely. However you felt about being there, it was a totally different scene than sitting in that old car for hours and hours. Felt Cove nudge your hand. You didn't pull away, and he intertwined his fingers through yours, smiling at you as he relaxed into your touch and rubbed the back of your hand softly with his thumb. Being here, you couldn't help but reminisce on what else had happened during the trip you had taken here all that time ago. There were a lot of things that had reminded you of it recently. You looked over at Cove, who seemed to be lost in the peace of the place, and wondered if any of it had crossed his mind. Smiling at the sight, you thought back on what had been a highlight of that long-gone vacation. I haven't forgotten the classic anklet chat. Oh my god. Which one? Which one? We almost kissed on that RV trip. You remember that? Cove snorted and covered his mouth with his hand, but you could still see the flush of pink on the tip of his nose. Yeah, I remember. I almost gave myself a concussion. It's still probably in the top 10 most humiliating things I've ever done. You chuckled at the memory and how your parents had caught the two of you in the loft after that. I'm sorry about that, by the
Don't worry
way.
about it.
Don't be, it was kind of funny. You continued chatting about the trip a little while longer, about the things you had seen and done and even eaten. A lot of the memories Cove had of the trip were similar to your own, but you were also surprised to hear of a few other things from his point of view. So much had happened, and there was no shortage of things to talk about. The place certainly had a nostalgic quality about it. Hey, Kate. You looked over at the sound of Cove saying your name to find him smiling at you, seeming relaxed amongst the nature of the park. Has anyone ever told you before that you have gorgeous eyes? Because you do. The words left his lips and you froze, completely taken aback by the compliment. He blushed, but his gaze remained on you. That's another thing that happened during the trip. You're so sweet. He blushed further, his face turning a deep shade of red. Your spirits were light as you ambled past information boards and picnic areas. But before long, you decided it was time to bring the short stop to an end and head back to the car to get on the road again. Cove sighed when you finally reached the vehicle, jangling the keys in his hand before unlocking the doors. I wish we didn't have to go, but we're going to be responsible and not stay longer than we should. How grown up of you! He smiled slightly, and with that, the two of you jumped in the car, buckled in, and he put it into drive. You were getting closer and closer to town as the sun started setting, though you were still far enough away that the radio stations were unfamiliar to you. Hey, we got new art! Cove twisted the dial this way and that before stumbling onto a channel with a song he seemed to like. That was a rare gift from the fates in a sea of static, strange radio jockeys and grating tunes. His face immediately brightened at the sound of it, and he drummed his fingers along the bottom of the steering wheel happily. Sitting back in his seat, he bobbed his head and shimmied his shoulders in time to the tune, all while mouthing along to the words. Occasionally, he even lifted one hand from the wheel to gesture with his fingers for a specific line. Sang along! Cove raised a pleased eyebrow at your vocalization. Emboldened by you, Cove decided to speak the words rather than lip sync. Your voices mixed together, slowly creeping louder and louder as you belted out the words of the song. Every now and then, a word would be sung wrong, and by the end, you were both laughing too much to continue. The song ended, and Cove reached over to start cycling through the radio stations again. Upon finding nothing tolerable, he flipped the dial off in defeat and leaned back in his seat with a sigh. You rested your head on your hand and stared out the window as the sky darkened, watching the landscape slowly melt into more familiar views. The miles went on, and any energy you had earlier was beginning to drain away. You imagined home and your family. You'd be there together soon. You know, I've spent all these years living in Sunset Bird and taking a few weeks each summer visiting my mom in that second room. That's not going to happen anymore. Not really. I can still see my parents, but the way it all works between us has changed. Forever. He paused, the silence stretching. A serious look settled on his face, his thoughts far away. I'm worried how things will be in the future. So many things will be different. I hope I'm ready for... Cove's mouth pulled into a tight line and he gave a small nod. You got the feeling he understood how you felt. Cove stared straight ahead down the long, long road. The path looked like it would never end from where you were, but that wasn't true. Eventually, he found a few more words to say.
I'm so glad.
I think it's good we were able to do this trip without any parents or chaperones. It was just us. We did it all. I don't know. I feel a little more independent now. A little more ready for what's ahead. Right. It's like a first real step to be on our own all the time. It'll be here before we know it. The topic seemed to wear on Cove, and he made an attempt to find something else to speak on. So I'm kind of sad about getting back. I'm gonna miss having you right there tonight. He cleared his throat quietly, though said nothing more. You smiled to yourself a little, hearing him say something like that out loud. I'm gonna miss it too. And with the feelings confirmed as mutual, the two of you fell into a comfortable silence. The sky outside grew ever darker as the hours passed by, the stars blinking on like tiny fireflies painted onto a canvas of blue. The scenery continued transitioning between open roads, industrial areas, and beach towns, becoming increasingly recognizable as time went on. You felt somewhat disconnected from the world around you as you watched it through your window, your tired mind growing hazy. It was a strange, reflective feeling, but peaceful nonetheless. Soon enough, the world would return to you, and you'd find your feet firmly on the ground. It couldn't be helped. The adventure would end, life could continue, but your memories would linger on. Alright, well, it's time for summer to end. Then summer ended. Moths bounced against your window, attracted by the light of your room. A siren called in the slowly darkening sky. Just as the day was coming to an end, so too would summer. Liz would be moving back into the dorms before long. Luckily, Lee had been able to come stay for a short trip before her own new journey began. She'd officially been accepted to her first choice college a few weeks ago. This was her last chance to see you all in person for... You flipped through the plans for the next few months, realizing you didn't even know when you'd have the opportunity for everyone to be in the same place again. It was hard to think that you'd likely be seeing even less of your cousin going forward, but you were delighted that she was pursuing her dreams. While you were still with each other, your family was going to have dinner together. As ever, the Holdens were tagging along too. Destination was that tropical place. You hadn't really discovered the tropical restaurant until you were a bit older, but everyone's enthusiasm had resulted in so many visits, you'd more than made up for lost time. Liz and Lee were excited to squeeze in another trip before setting off again. Technically, you were getting ready to go out, though your mind was only half on the task. It was pleasantly warm evening, the kind that epitomized the vacation feeling, and you were in no mood to spoil it by rushing around. While idly gazing at your room, you spotted a small cluster of unopened envelopes. That must have been left for you by a parent earlier. You headed over to the table to flick through for anything of interest. As a child, any correspondence felt exciting due to its rarity. You recognize now that most of it was mundane, but you were checking any mail you got more regularly as of late. There was something you were expecting. You stopped at a crisp white envelope. The logo proudly proclaimed the sender, a school you had applied to. You had to see what it was going to say, regardless of whether it was good or bad, as soon as you could. You pulled apart the glued flap on the front envelope and extracted the letter. Your eyes darted over the message, rushing past the pleasantries to get to the heart of the matter. The blood pounding in your ears deafened you to the world outside that was contained within these letters. Your heart skidded to a halt as you read your verdict. You'd been accepted! Ecstatic. Bouncing on the balls of your feet, you pressed the letter to your chest as your excitement bubbled over. I wanted Cove to be the first to know. Wasting no time, you pulled up his number on your phone and rang your boyfriend. You pressed your phone to your ear, waiting impatiently for the dull ringing to be replaced with Cove's voice. Took a few rings, but you were in luck. Cove picked up the call. Hi, Kate. You blurted your news without the customary preamble of a greeting. Cove, I got in. I'm going to college.
Seriously?
You heard him gasp before continuing, openly gushing over your good fortune. That's amazing. It's incredible. You did it. Congratulations, Kate. There was another pause as you and Cove both marveled over the announcement. No, seriously, this is really, really big, and you deserve it so much. I know it'll be good for you. Thanks, I just had to tell you right away as soon as I knew. You heard Cove chuckle softly over the phone. Thanks, I appreciate it. You wanted to gush about the adventure lined up before you, a dream that you'd transformed into a plan, one that was soon to become your reality. But your hopes were temporarily dashed as Mom called up from downstairs.
Hey.
It's almost time to go. Kate, are you ready? Oh. You covered your phone with your free hand and turned away from the device, not wanting to deafen Cove. The yell was intended to reach another floor of your house, not an ear that was virtually inches away. Coming! You brought your mouth back to the phone. I gotta go. See you soon. Yeah, there's something I want to tell you too, but we can do that later. We're about to have dinner together. That piqued your curiosity, but you exchanged goodbyes and hung up. Hurriedly, you finished getting ready for the dinner, acutely aware that time was against you. Despite that, you didn't regret the time you'd spent on the phone. It had all been worth it to speak to Cove. Now you tell your family. You tore her downstairs, your feet barely touching the ground as you leapt from one step to the next. Your arrival, which compensated for excessive speed by creating a riot of noise, caught Mom's attention. Someone's hungry. Her eyes were twinkling, amused as she let you catch your breath. So what's the rush for? It's not for food. I got into college! Mom whooped, holding out a hand for a high five.
You're fantastic.
Nice, Kate. The commotion had summoned the other women from various corners of the house. Liz looked up from her book, grinning as Lee hurried over. Ma swept in from the side, wrapping an arm around your shoulders and squeezing you close.
Good job.
That's wonderful, sweetie. Hey, let me in on the hug. She wrapped her arms around you both without waiting for an invitation. Liz, her book neatly abandoned on the floor, tapped her hands in applause as she walked up to you. Good job, Kate. Lee didn't hide her excitement, openly jumping for joy as she treated you to thunderous applause.
Seriously?
It's amazing. You're gonna be amazing. This is really funny. I'm only finding out I got into college at the end of summer. The timing is really weird. Some of the stuff is a little bit odd. That's nice, but you shouldn't just stand there. Yeah, there's room for everyone. Your moms opened the hug, both keeping an arm around you as they each held out another to invite Liz and Lee in. Giggling, Lee dove into the hug. Liz rolled her eyes, but allowed herself to be beckoned into the group hug. Your mom squeezed everyone together tightly. Mom's long hair brushed against your face as she turned to check the clock.
Let's go.
We could take this party on the road. We gotta head out for dinner soon. Nodding, you were aware that your attempts to finish getting ready had been cast aside in favor of congratulating you. The impossible West Coast Fireflies had to process your paperwork manually. It slowed things down a bit. Exactly. I have to do a couple more things first. It won't take long. You hurried back upstairs. Though getting ready to go was the issue at hand, you couldn't stop your thoughts from drifting back to the future. Your mind was buzzing over the news you'd received and everything that would soon unfurl. Everyone piled into the car. While it was marketed as being suitable to hold 5 people, in practice it made for a very tight fit. Your mom sitting in the front were fine. You, Liz, and Lee were squished into the back. Lee was in the middle, wedged between you and your sister. My mom was an excellent timekeeper. Thanks to her efforts, you pulled up near the restaurant on time. The process of getting out of the car was slightly easier than squeezing into it, with much less coordination required to release the seatbelts and to secure them. You gave Lee a hand as she clambered out from the middle seat, then headed into the building as a group. A waiter greeted you as you entered. Ma let him know how many of you there would be in total, and he went to arrange a table that met your needs. He returned promptly to guide you to your seats. You perched comfortably in your chair, your head held aloft, as if buoyed by today's good fortune. Your family settled down around you, all cheerful and looking forward to the evening ahead. Your drink order had just been taken when the Holdens came through the door. They were pointed in your direction, though with Mom waving an arm in the air, it was hardly necessary. Cove and Mr. Holden came to join you at the table. As greetings were being exchanged, Cove took a seat opposite you. It had been left empty by unspoken acknowledgement that you and Cove would be wanting to sit together. Mr. Holden sat beside him.
Hi.
It's great to see you. Glad you could make it. Hello, everyone. You wouldn't believe how hungry I am. Came to the right place then. There was some laughter, though Liz groaned playfully, shaking her head at Mom's sense of humor. Growing up, she'd have complained, and Mom would have responded by making another comment. Liz had mellowed over the years, but she still made a show of despairing at Mom's jokes. Her reaction to them had become a joke in its own right. Menus were soon passed around, and a temporary hush fell over the table as everyone read. It didn't last long, punctured by comments about what people had eaten here before, and light chatter about what people were considering tonight. Once the waiter had disappeared with your orders, Cliff piped up.
Okay.
So, I've got some good news. Kira's making a trip out here tomorrow. Cove nodded, turning from his father to the rest of the table. Yeah, we talked about it and figured this was a good time for everyone.
Very nice.
That's great. Everyone reacted positively to the news, though Ma looked
It's
wistful.
a shame.
If only we'd known. Here we are having a big meal without her. If we'd waited one day, she could have joined us. Mom patted Ma on the back, gently nudging her from the realm of possibilities and what-ifs, and back to the evening that was going so well. Chin up, Lee and Liz will still be here tomorrow. We'll just have to throw another get-together and keep the fun train chugging along. Ma smiled warmly, taking Mom's hand in hers. That's true, there's plenty to celebrate right now, but there will be more good news and good times on the horizon. Right, and speaking of, that's not all we've got either. Mr. Holden's eyes were alight as he sat up straight in his chair, face angled toward his son. He barely let a beat go before nudging Cove with his elbow, pushing him to follow up on the announcement. He was the very picture of a proud papa. Cove shied from the limelight, ducking his head down and staring at his lap as he spoke. Well, it's just, I've switched over to working full-time instead of only part-time. Plus, I've been looking at apartments. There's a few I can choose from. He flicked his gaze up at everyone around the table, a smile creeping over his face. I'll be pretty busy going forward. Apartments. He was moving. Cove was going to move out of his dad's house. After 10 years, he wasn't going to be your neighbor anymore. Mr. Holden gripped one of Cove's shoulders and gave it a loving shake. His excitement couldn't be contained. Incredible! Cove's actually going to make it to adulthood. It's a miracle! Cove leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling in mock wonder.
I'm so glad.
I wasn't convinced I'd be able to rear a kid all the way to this point, but thankfully I lucked out and got the best boy a dad could have asked for. Dad? Cove blinkered his vision with his hands on the side of his face, temporarily blocking his father from sight. Despite all of his genuine bashfulness, which left him unable to meet anyone's eyes after all the attention thrust his way, he was happy.
Thanks.
I was really lucky too. You're a good dad.
Aw.
Aw, come here. Mr. Holden threw an arm around Cove's neck, pulling him into as close of a hug as the seating allowed. He rubbed his cheek on top of his son's head while Cove chuckled, accepting the affection with good humor. Ma leaned over and whispered in your ear, her fingertips brushing against her cheeks. Would you like to tell Cove and Mr. Holden what you told us earlier? Technically, Mr. Holden was the only one who didn't actually know at this point, but your ma didn't find out about your call with Cove. Sure. You tapped on your glass with a fork, something you'd seen done in movies when people wanted attention. Didn't make quite the same noise, possibly because your glass was a tumbler and not a champagne flute, but everyone looked your direction anyway. I've got something to announce too. Of course. I got my acceptance letter today. I'll be going to college soon. Mr. Holden gave you a thumbs up.
Good.
Impressive. You're a good kid. The world's your oyster. Cove grinned at you from across the table. He was still very pleased for you, despite this not being the first time he'd heard about it. You looked around at the faces of the company here. You'd been on this journey with everyone here for years, seen them falter and grow, and they had watched you go through the same. Cove was leaving his family home. Liz was heading back to college, while Lee was starting at hers. You were staying close, but it was clear that you were all heading in different directions, to different destinations. Some near and some far, but it wouldn't be long until you were all going your own way. It was bittersweet. You turned your head to the side, wistful, not wanting to spoil the evening with your troubles. You were glad that everyone was succeeding, but the idea of splitting up gave you a twinge of regret. These people had been key pillars in your life. Days ahead without them, no matter how bright and shiny, felt a little empty, like a theme park after closing time. But you focused your mind on the sweet side. New adventures were still ahead, and you could encourage that optimism. Cove brought some attention to himself with a clearing of his throat and a small interjection. I'm going to stretch my legs while we're waiting for the food and everything.
Sure.
With a tiny smile, he nodded at his dad, but the lightness to his expression faded when he moved his face to you. Want to come? I want to talk to you? He was attempting to be subtle, but there was something very obviously going on in his mind, something he wanted to talk to you about alone. You watched him with concern as you rose from your seat. Yeah, I'll go. Take care. With those parting words, the two of you walked about the place. He was trying to get as far away from everyone else as possible without actually exiting the building. What did you need to say? He hadn't admitted He hadn't admitted that was what this was about, but he didn't need to. Cove started pulling on the hem of his shirt. He turned his head back to face you, but it was an awkward movement. Well, I wanted to talk to you one-on-one about all this. You know, my work, moving. That's what I meant when we talked before dinner. I mean, it was coming before, but now it's pretty much here. Yeah, it's exciting. Cove stopped picking at his shirt and seemed to respond well to that response. He was relieved you weren't upset about it. I'm glad you think so. But then he looked down and his brows furrowed. You saw his hand shift away from his clothes to instead rub at his arm. Are you looking forward to it? I am. Well, I'm trying to be. He ducked his head further and you saw his face start to redden. But it's scary. I don't want things to end. You're going to do great things. You're so nice to me. Cove then turned his head away and wrapped his arms around himself. You felt a sudden chill that definitely wasn't caused by the air conditioner. I was just thinking, are we really going to stay a couple? His words came out hesitantly. He didn't want to ask this. He didn't want a no. I'm not just talking about today, but forever, always. Even if things change later, right now, do you feel we can make it? Or do you think we can't last, that one day we'll have to move on? Kept calm. You understood his concern. It was definitely hard to imagine what would happen. However, you didn't let yourself get upset. I want it to be forever. You thought about the future and how unsure it was. You couldn't know what was to come. However, there was one thing you did know, and that was how much you cared about him. Cove laughed with a delicate smile on his face. Okay, you win. I wanted to prepare myself for the horrifying unknown, but you're kind of giving me no choice but to be optimistic here. His eyes sparkled with mischief. Strong armor. Oh no, I can't believe you're being forced to have hope about life. His lips twitched up at your sarcasm. How am I going to get past this? He gave a small smile and then stopped joking around. Thanks for listening to me, Kate. It helped. You felt pleased that his anxiety had eased after talking it out. I think it's time to rejoin the party. Do you feel like heading back?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot what we were doing here. That'd probably be good. With matching smiles, you both reclaimed your seats at the table. Both of you felt lighter, and it showed. You seem happy. What was that? Yeah, it looked like you were having quite the conversation over there. It's neighbor stuff, sorry. I used to be your neighbor. He waved off their questions, and you didn't offer any explanations. They still seemed curious, but caught that Cove wanted to stay between the two of you and let it drop. Things relaxed, and you took a sip of your drink. Lee idly tapped the table and got your attention. I'm so excited to try this place. I'm not sure if I've ever really eaten here. It's more Kate's place than mine. Let's hope it's good. All the restaurants in the area are pretty top-notch, in my humble opinion. We'll see. It was a challenge issued. Liz carried herself like some sort of professional food critic, and Mom snorted. Tough crowd, geez, Liz. Ma giggled and chimed in as well, much to Liz's embarrassment. That's right, Lizzie, geez. Oh, geez, Louise. I'll conform. Liz put a hand over her eyes in mock offense.
Rude.
I hardly say geez anymore. Cove smirked and turned to your sister. You leaned forward in your seat.
Huh.
Geez. Everyone burst out laughing because, besides Liz, of course, she smirked. No one could ever accuse your family of being no fun. Night fell soon after everyone finished their meals, and before you knew it, you were standing in the parking lot saying your goodbyes and packing up the cars to go home. After the last chores were done, your family spent some more time together. The rest of the night felt like it was going by in the blink of an eye, and somehow the time came to retire to your room to sleep. You pulled your covers up over your chin and settled down for the night, getting warm and cozy. As your head sank into your pillow, you closed your eyes. Your mind drifted back to everything that had happened that day. You could see it all now, behind your eyelids, as though you were experiencing it all over again. And then the image of Cove popped into your head, and you smiled softly to yourself. Feeling tired, so I snuggled deeper into bed. It wasn't long before your eyes were growing heavy, and you drifted off into a peaceful sleep. The next morning, you awoke slowly from a comfortable dream, finding yourself safe and warm and tucked up in bed. I actually kind of thought he was going to interrupt my sleep, but I guess not. I probably just maybe skipped a scene. With a small stretch, you opened your eyes to the sun shining in through the window. After waking up a little more and getting ready, you headed downstairs to find your family all gathered around the kitchen area. Good morning. You greeted them all, receiving a chorus of good mornings back in return. You nodded in acknowledgement as you headed into the kitchen to find some breakfast. A knock at the front door caught your attention, and curiosity pulled you to follow several steps behind Mom as she went to answer it. Cove was waiting there with both of his parents. Morning.
Hello.
Hi there. Surprised at that sight, Mom paused a moment, and then she pulled Kira into a big hug. Meanwhile, you approached the doorway and flashed a small smile at Cove. Kira, it's been too long. I know, time's been flying. Kira's gaze slid over to you. She waved. Hi there, Kate. Hi, it took you long enough to come back here. Smiled. Right? I should have gotten myself into town long ago. Kira's gaze fell on Cove, and you could see it growing more affectionate. Her smile widened. I'm really happy to be visiting my baby. Enough standing around out there. Come on in. Mom moved aside to usher the group in and guided them to the living room. Before anyone could get settled in, Mom spoke up. You're all welcome to stay for breakfast. We still have some great spices and stuff from the farmer's market. Yeah, we'd be thrilled to host you. There were eager nods from Mr. Holden and Kira, but Cove looked around the room with familiar faces before speaking up. Maybe, instead of staying here, why don't we go to the beach? A scenic picnic, eh? Mr. Holden crossed his arms and contemplated that idea happily. Excited, Kira clapped her hands together. Oh, we could really make a day out of it. Might as well enjoy the ocean while we can. That sounds lovely, Cove. Everyone else put in their own agreement with Cove's suggestion. Before long, both families had dispersed, getting everything ready. Sandwiches had to be made, water, sunscreen, towels, and more needed to be gathered and packed. An hour later, both your family and Cove's were walking down the old path to the beach. The morning was already turning into a bright and beautiful day. You honestly couldn't ask for better weather for a beach trip. The moment you laid your eyes on the full view of the ocean, you stopped and stood there mesmerized. It didn't matter that you grew up there. The sight always filled you with wonder. Hey, Kate.
So?
I was thinking about calling Terry and Miranda, see if they can come too. Everyone else is pretty much already here, so would your family mind? Wow, you had a good idea. He chuckled, his mouth pulled into a bent smile. Had to happen sometime, even with Clifford's surprise Holden raising me. That had you laughing this time. You were already eager for your friends to join you there. Hey, Mom, Ma! They both stopped what they were doing and turned towards you. Immediately, you darted over to them. I have a question. Would it be alright if Terry and Miranda came by? I don't see why not. Ma looked to Mom to see what she thought. She nodded in agreement. Mom then shot a glance over at Mr. Holden and Kira, knowing they had likely heard everything. Cliff, Kira, what do you think? The more the merrier. Of course, they're welcome with me. Thanks. Delighted, you nodded and turned on your heels. Cove was still several feet away talking to Lee and Liz, likely about the same topic. With a beaming smile, you gave him a thumbs up, and the two of them must have also approved, as Cove quickly got his phone out and started making the calls. At that, you turned your attention to helping with the picnic setup. You hurried over to your mom's and helped put the rest of the food out. In moments, you noticed Cove at your side. So what's the verdict on those invitations? They're gonna come. Yes! Excited, you raised your free hand for a high five. Cove laughed and slapped your hand. They'll meet us here later today. Shouldn't be too long. I can't wait. Once the setup was done, everyone got comfortable and dug into the food. You couldn't remember the last time breakfast tasted this good, but you attributed it to the gorgeous ocean view and soothing sea breeze. Morning swiftly gave way into afternoon, and a very recognizable face came walking down the shore. Baxter seemed momentarily surprised to see you all there. He pleasantly approached with a wave.
Hello, folks.
Hello there, didn't mean to intrude on the party. I was coming down to get some fresh air. Oh, you didn't intrude on anything. You're welcome to join us. We brought plenty of towels and food and sunscreen. Yeah, you're one of the neighbors. Kick back and relax with us.
Thank you.
I can't possibly say no to that. Thank you. Baxter's gaze moved over to you and Cove. He smiled. Kate, Cove, long time no see. Hi. You waved from where you leisurely sat, and Cove nodded. It was then that Baxter noticed the faces he didn't immediately recognize from around the neighborhood. He turned up his charm even more for the introductions. Excuse me, I'm Baxter Ward. Sorry we haven't met before. Well, we're not typically from around this area, just visiting. I'm Cove's mom. A few giggles escaped Lee as she watched Baxter carefully. When his attention turned to her now, she held out a hand. I'm Lee, Kate and Liz's cousin. Baxter shook it and then took a step back. Lee's smile grew. I'll remember that. It's very nice to meet you both. After that, Baxter spent some time getting better acquainted with everyone, and Terry and Miranda arrived excitedly. The conversation shifted to what you all do next.
In that case,
We could do a few rounds of volleyball. There's plenty of us now.
is that all right?
Could I play? Of course. Miranda brightened, delighted with this plan. Ma looked around to see if there were any other takers. I don't feel like playing. I'd have to change, but it'd be fun to watch. I could be the ref. My eyes won't miss a thing. Volleyball's a good idea, but there should probably be something happening for those who aren't a fan. Ooh, I have some crafting supplies we could use to make jewelry. We could use stuff around the beach to accentuate them.
Really?
I want to make a necklace. I'd be interested in trying my hand at that too. I could do that. Nice.
Absolutely.
Impromptu crafting is my kind of party. I'd like to join too, please. Like some jewelry. Already, you were imagining various designs you could make depending on what Lee let you use. Your cousin shot you a thumbs up, clearly happy with your decision. Kira got up from the towel she was sitting on. She brushed some sand off her legs and then stretched her arms over her head.
Can do.
I'm up for a few rounds. Well, since there's still a free spot, I'll throw my hat in the ring. The things I do for family. Thank you, Liz. I'd love that. Liz got up from where she was sitting, and you could tell by her expression she was already determined to win. You laughed to yourself, curious how the game would turn out. Now that the plans were settled, the group temporarily split into two.
Okay.
Let me pop back to the house to get my supplies. Anything we can do while you're gone? You can start clearing out the towels for us to work at, and if you want, look for good stuff to use.
I'm on it.
Roger that. While Lee ran back to the house, the group did as she suggested. By the time she returned, everyone had their craft area ready to work at. Lee sat down on one of the towels and looked up at everyone eagerly. She held up two necklace options. I hope you've all been thinking about what you want to make. I have for everyone a choice of either a chain or threaded rope. How do I pick? All I know is I want to put some sea glass chunks on it. This is a charming idea. His eyes went back and forth between Lee's two necklace base options. You could tell he was thinking quite hard about it. Can't decide anything for mine. No rush, I'll leave the strands here and you can decorate it however you want later. Suppose I'll use whatever I spot around the beach first. Fate can decide. I think I'll keep it classic and only worry about finding a decent shell. I'm planning on doing shells too. Let's wait and see, I don't have a plan. Baxter nodded, obviously able to relate to that mindset. Cove crossed his arms and chewed the inside of his cheek. You weren't the only one who noticed. What's wrong, Cove? Not sure what to use. I mean, ideally I want a shark tooth, but what are the chances I'd even find one? Mom smiled. You both looked at him sympathetically. The rare downside of not having a shark-filled coast. That would make for a really nice necklace, though. At Cove's pouting, Mom gave him a little bump on the shoulder with her fist. Well, don't lose all hope. You never know. You might not be really lucky. Cove laughed. It cheered him up, even though he wasn't really convinced. After that, the little crafting club busily went to work on their pieces. Whatever they decided on using was attached in loops, which were then slid onto their necklace base. Terry was immensely proud of herself when she was done. Hers was simple but gorgeous because of the striking piece of sea glass she painstakingly searched for and found. Baxter excitedly showed off his finished piece to everyone. He stayed true to his word and used various materials he found along the beach. The necklace looked like it had good weight from the clutter. He always had an eclectic style, it seemed. Cove ended up using driftwood of varying lengths to design his necklace. Despite not finding any shark teeth, he still looked pretty pleased. Mom decided on a medium-sized purple ringed top shell as the centerpiece of hers, and Lee went with a few small Simina shells. They both put their necklaces on soon after finishing them. After combing the beach several times, you found just what you were looking for. It took a bit, but you managed to make a necklace you were satisfied with. It mostly had sea glass. Your group of crafters would also cheer for the volleyball players whenever shouts could be heard coming out of the court. On top of that, you would all hold up each newly made piece in the air, and the players would take a breather to applaud the creation. You really enjoyed searching the beach, trading supplies, and watching everyone make their necklaces. The crafting club was definitely a success, and you weren't the only one that had a blast. The afternoon continued to drift by, but the fun was still going strong. Occasionally, someone would head back to the houses to use the bathroom, rest away from the sun a while, or retrieve something that they needed, but they always came back. The beach was never empty, and there was always a new conversation to take part in or another game to join. At one point, Mr. Holden even brought out a pack of cards. He roped the whole group into a few rounds of good old Go Fish. There was only one thing that could bring this beach day to an end, and that was for the day itself to end. Before anyone realized it, the sun began to set over the sea. As that happened, you were taking a break, sitting on a towel with your legs stretched out past it and your feet buried in the warm sand. Shortly, you looked up to see your moms approaching. They stopped in front of you and you smiled. Hey there, kiddo.
How are you?
Hi. I'm doing great. Today's been amazing. They both sat down, squishing you between them. Ma leaned her head against yours and Mom started rubbing your back soothingly. Nothing more was said at first, but Ma sighed contentedly. Mom looked at you wistfully. We're both really proud of you, Kate. You grew up to be more than we could have ever hoped. It's only thanks to you two. Ma wrapped an arm around your middle and squeezed you tightly in a side hug. Mom continued lightly scratching your back.
Thank you.
That means a lot, but I still think you're selling yourself short. You've always been a lovely person, and I'm so thrilled to know you. Your voice faltered, and you honestly couldn't imagine your life any other way. Ma lightly brushed some of your hair back and left a small kiss there. So happy I got to have both of you as my moms. After that, all three of you were sitting there, getting all sentimental. I don't know how we got so lucky with you and Liz. Ma reached out in front of you for Mom's hand. She gave it to her, and Ma squeezed it.
Of course.
Kate has a point. We must have done something right. You stayed there quietly and contentedly, watching the sun set with your parents for a while, until Mr. Holden called out to you. He was still walking in your direction. We were talking and think we're going to take a walk down the shore, and if you want to come? Automatically, you looked to your moms what they were thinking. Mom glanced from you to Ma and smiled. That sounds good to me.
Fantastic.
Yes, be very nice. My legs need some stretching. That's a yes across the board. Thrilled, Mr. Holden threw out a thumbs up and began heading back the way he came in at a light jog. Hey, don't leave us in the dust. Cliff kept going forward but flipped around, walking backwards across the sand so he could face you again.
Worries.
We won't leave without you. All right, we'll catch up. Ready to go? Uh-huh. Both of your moms held out a hand to you. Chuckling, you gave them each one, and you all strolled back to the rest of the group. When Liz was in reach, Ma used her free hand to pull it in too. Liz shook her head, but her mouth quirked into a smirk she didn't resist. Together as a family, you followed behind the others hand in hand. Your feet squished into the wet sand as waves rolled over them, and you didn't have a single care in the world as more and more stars began to dot the sky. Once the sun had long been out of sight, it was finally time to pack up. The closing of the day and the ever-approaching end of summer seemed to intertwine. It caused a quiet, reflective mood to blanket over the group. On the beach, Terry and Miranda took turns compressing Cove into a hug before moving on to do the same to you. You chuckled, still overjoyed you got to see them today. Sorry we have to go already. My parents are here. That's okay. But still, I wish we could help clear all this up. Don't worry about that. Just thanks for coming out today. It was cool having everyone here.
Yep.
I'm super glad we came. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. Nodding, you turned your attention to Terry. She wore a large grin on her face and held out a hand for a low five. You obliged.
See you later.
Take care of yourself, buddies. After that, they walked away, waving to you and Cove as they went down the shore. Cove waved quietly back with a small smile on his face. Happy I got to see them. You looked at Cove. He nodded. Me too. Taking you by surprise, Terry jumped and twisted around. She kept up with Miranda by walking backwards. She kept the mood of your farewell light by shooting a finger guns at you and Cove. Miranda bumped her with a hip. It left everyone with a laugh just before they disappeared down the bend.
Come
Kate?
on.
Hey, Cove, could you come here? Both of your parents were motioning for you. The two of you went to them. Tons of things ended up at the beach over the course of the day, so there was still so much to pack up, and the parents needed help. With a nod, you got to it, stuffing various things into bags and bundling up in towels. Once the things were ready to go, everyone filled their arms with as much as they could carry. Absolutely no one wanted this to be a back-and-forth kind of task. The walk back home ended up being mostly quiet. Each person seemed to be feeling the effects of the day. A cool breeze carried you across the sand and onto the road. There was a sigh of relief from what felt like the group as a whole when they arrived back to the neighborhood. Baxter carefully placed what he had been carrying on the ground. Thank you so much for helping with that.
Thanks.
No, thank you for allowing me to join today. You all shared with me. Helping to carry it back is the least I can do. Ma nodded, and the others started collecting their things from his pile. Baxter, meanwhile, stepped over to you and Cove. It was really a pleasure getting to know you both this summer. His head tilted towards you, and he smiled warmly. Baxter offered you his hand. Use your freer hand to shake his. It was tough with what you were carrying, but you were able to extend one of your hands a bit. Baxter chuckled and shook it. Really enjoyed
Glad to
meeting you.
hear it.
Delighted to hear that. I enjoyed this vacation immensely thanks to you. Baxter turned to shake Cove's hands this time. He was a little incredulous for a moment, but then Cove eventually shifted what he's carrying and took Baxter's hand. It wasn't long, but it was a solid handshake. Baxter was clearly pleased. Wish you had more time together, but it was still a nice ride while it lasted. Would happily do it all over again. Bye, Baxter. Yeah, bye. Baxter nodded and walked a few steps toward his condo. He then stopped and waved.
Goodbye.
Baxter sauntered away completely and disappeared into the condo to return to his own things, his time with you and your family and friends ending. You paused for a moment, staring at where he went. But afterwards, you looked back over at the rest of the group. Lee and Liz were just going inside your house. You couldn't spot Kira or Mr. Holden anywhere, but the door to their house was wide open. Mom approached you with an amused look on her face. Seems like you're holding up some Holden things. Surprised, you glanced down to take a quick inventory of what you were holding. Mom was right, some of it belonged to the neighbors. Would you mind dropping it off now? Looking down at everything you were carrying, you sighed. A teasing grin played at your lips. The Holdens is a long walk from here. Co snorted and laughed next to you, making your grin widen. Mom chuckled and shook her head. You can hack it, and then you'll get to experience the joy of a job well done. You laughed happily and nodded. Mom smiled fondly. Cove took a few steps toward his house and stopped, waiting for you. Good night, Cove. I'll see you inside, Kate. Night. You caught up to Cove, and together you went over to his house. Walking in the front door, you saw Kira and Mr. Holden busily unpacking already. Things were scattered on counters, and they were moving around each other, putting the items away. They both lifted their heads when Cove closed the front door. Hey. It's nice seeing you again already, Kate. Her teasing tone brought a light smile to your face. You hefted the stuff in your arms a little closer. I ended up with things of yours from the beach. Oh, thanks for getting that to us. You can put it here on that coffee table. Mr. Holden put it at the surface he was referring to, and you immediately left what didn't belong to your family there. Cove put his own things down on the floor just at his feet, wading through everything strewn about to reach his parents. Putting your family stuff on the ground for a moment, you dusted your hands off and straightened up. You needed a second of rest and a minute to resituate it all. You went over to where the others were too. Kira opened her arms wide, wanting to hug you. Accepted. Without any hesitation, you went to Kira and let her pull you into a hug. You squeezed back just as tight. Her hug was filled with affection, and you hoped she could feel how much you cared about her too. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. It was a blast. You're welcome. Today was amazing. Kira eventually released you, but patted the tops of your shoulders as a final gesture. Every time I've gotten to come by, it's been an absolute joy. Things really couldn't have worked out better. Mr. Holden took a step closer to you. Kira moved aside to let him say goodbye too. He grinned. Thanks for always being such a friendly neighbor, and not just right now, but as long as I've known you. I didn't always make it easy, but you and your family are good people. I really truly appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again, Kate, so much. At that, Mr. Holden reached over and gave you a soft pat on the top of your head. You're good people too. You smiled softly. Mr. Holden looked away for a moment and sniffled. When he met your gaze once more, his mouth pulled into a wide, happy grin. It means a lot to me. Mr. Holden was staring at you, but his gaze seemed far away. Maybe he was looking back to who you used to be, the 8-year-old he had asked to be his son's new friend. Bye, Kate, you smiled softly. Then Cove took a step forward. He gestured to the pile of things he had carried into the house.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about all that. I'll put the stuff away in a few minutes. Right, I need to do the same with my family, I figured. Cove walked you to the door and held it open. Taking one last check around to make sure you had all your things to bring home, you went into the road. He leaned his body against the door frame, not following you out. So, this is it, huh? Actually, that's not what I mean. His expression twisted and he shook his head a bit, like he was trying to banish his offensive thoughts. I'll just say bye. Yeah, bye. It won't be long before you see me again. You offered a small wave goodbye with one of your hands. Cove reached forward and gently cupped your face with one hand, his thumb trailing across your cheek for several heartbeats. Mesmerized by his blue eyes, you stepped forward, delighted to oblige the request he was silently asking. He met you halfway as you smiled into the kiss. It was soft with longing, and your chest ached knowing there couldn't be anything more than this, at least for now. One of his hands grabbed onto the door handle and firmly held it. He was stopping himself from coming along with you. As you walked over to your own front door, you stopped. Turning around, you spotted Cove right where you left him. You laughed quietly to yourself. For a small pause, you both stared at each other from across the street. Blew him a kiss. Cove reached out like he was catching it off to the side because we're adorable, and then he curled his fist to his chest, holding the kiss close. Your lips curled into a beamy smile. I hope you treasure that! Forever! Things couldn't be dragged out any longer. After one more shared smile, you opened the door and went inside, shutting it behind you. A few steps in, you saw your family gathered in the living room. They were still busy unpacking and cleaning. You added the things you brought to the pile on the kitchen counter. Mom stood up, rubbing her eyes a bit. She yawned loudly. I'm bushed. How about we finish the rest of the chores tomorrow? Yes, honestly, it's too late for this. Please and thank you. Ma put her hands on her hips and turned around to the rest of the room. Ma was not the one who liked to leave a mess about, but she sighed. I suppose we can make an exception to the usual rule. It's been a really long day. Liz grinned contentedly. Lee wasted no time in skipping over to you and hooked you into a side hug. Good night. Hope you have the loveliest of dreams of you-know-who. Lee ended that sentence with a wink and a hearty laugh. She let you go. I laughed. Her comment was pretty much exactly what you were expecting out of her, and for the several moments you couldn't stop laughing. Lee giggled, happy that you were also enjoying her teasing. She playfully nudged you with her elbow. The grin on her face widened. Don't worry, your private thoughts are safe with me. Here's to us, Kate. Tonight, tomorrow, forever. Thanks, Lee. Don't know what I'd do without you. It'd be lonely. Lee stretched her arms high over her head. She yawned loudly and looked at you with tired eyes. I think that's my cue to head to bed. Bye. I think so too. Have fun sharing the room with Liz. She laughed at that, and Lee shuffled off toward the guest bedroom. Before you had a chance to do anything else, you could feel the top of your head being tapped. You spun around to see Liz smirking. Nighty-night, I'm heading to bed too. It's been a long day and I have a lot to prepare for tomorrow. Exhaling, you automatically started fixing the back of your hair. When Liz didn't immediately walk away, you smiled softly at her. Everything okay? Her gaze moved away, and you knew she had more to say. You waited patiently for Liz to compose her thoughts. It's been a good summer. It was nice to come back home. Everyone's saying goodbye, I guess because it's the end of summer. You nodded, and Liz gave you a teasing nudge as she went by. Amused, you turned and watched her go. Love you, baby sister. Love you too. Liz stopped walking and stared at you for a moment. She smiled softly at you. Get some sleep soon. Morning will be here faster than you know it. I will. When Liz was out of sight, Mom started up the next conversation over her shoulder. Aren't you heading up to bed too? I want to relax first. Desperately, you needed some time to decompress and clear your mind. You worried if you went off to bed now that you would end up staring at the ceiling all night. Okay. Ma came over too, smiling understandingly. She pulled you into a big hug. Alright, you do what you need to. I love you. When you were done hugging Ma, Mom pulled you into another hug. Their actions, basically handing you off to the other, had you laughing jovially. I love you so much. Love you too. Starting to think that at the start of the adulthood chapter, Godzilla attacks and everyone gets split up with the chaos or something. I don't think anything bad will ever happen in this game. They both couldn't resist taking turns hugging you again. Your smile widened. It felt so good to be loved. Good night, kiddo. Sleep tight. Good night, sweetie. Night. After that, your moms headed off toward their bedroom down the hall. You were about to turn the other direction when you heard Mom's voice. And don't let the bedbugs bite. You heard Ma chuckling as you watched them go with a smile. Time had passed, but you weren't exactly sure how much. Sighing, you sat up on the couch. It was a good rest. All your tired muscles felt quite relaxed. You got up, planning on going to bed, when something out of the window caught your eye. Your feet brought you right in front of the large window spanning the length of the back wall. You stared out into the hills behind your house. As if on cue, your phone came on, alerting you of a new notification. It was Cove. Want to hang out on the hill tonight? Something inside you told you this was the right kind of night to take a trip out there. You sent him back a very quick message. Yeah. Heart. You went over the front door, and stepping over the threshold, you gave the living room one last glance over your shoulder. Then you shut the door behind you. Silently, you made your way to the Poppy Hill. With light steps in the dark, you walked across the hills behind your house. Up at the very top, silhouetted beneath the night sky, was a familiar figure already waiting there. Smiling, you wondered just how he always got there first. You even had the advantage of living closer. Then again, maybe it was only in your mind, but somehow Cove was intrinsically linked with this place. After all these years, it would be weird to scan this horizon and not find him there, as surreal as the shore without the sea. The distance between you was growing shorter by the second. Hearing the grass and earth crunch under your feet, Cove turned. A grin spread over his face as he saw you. You took your place standing behind him on the crest of the Poppy Hill, looking out over the ocean. Same as you'd done on countless times since he first arrived, when you found him on this very spot. He had officially broken the silence, the spell that held you both in place. You looked at him expectantly. There's something I've always kind of wondered about. He cocked his head, giving you a sidelong glance. What did you think about me when we met? I was just a kid you'd never seen before, bawling his eyes out on the hill next to your house. He chuckled, his eyes drifting toward the sea beyond, before flicking back to you. The way his gaze pulled back to you made it clear he was genuinely invested in the topic. Luckily for him, you remembered what initially struck you in that moment. It was as if it had only happened yesterday. Well, I remember noticing the neon pink cast you had to wear that summer. Cove burst into genuine laughter at your reply, and that was actually... I picked that choice back in stage 1, that was what I noticed. And the game pulled it forward to now. I guess that's fair, it did kind of stand out. Smiling, you continued to reminisce about that first meeting. I also remember trying to cheer you up. I remember that too. He ran a hand through his hair, and you knew his line of questioning wasn't at an end, even before he spoke again. Do you remember what you thought about me, as a person? Was I annoying or mean, or... I didn't know what the feelings were at the time, but I thought you were cute right away. Cove brought his hand to his mouth, half hiding a self-conscious smile. His wavy eyebrows were raised in open amazement. Thank you for feeling that way. He scrunched his eyes closed, regretting his phrasing. Sorry That sounded weird, sorry, but yeah, I'm glad. Cove's hand drifted to the scar on his arm, his fingers unconsciously gliding over the mark. It was much less noticeable than it had been when the neon pink cast had first come off, shrunken gradually over the years as his body healed, then dwarfed in comparison to his growing body. Still, his fingers came back to it without thinking. He gave a half smile, not meeting your eyes. I feel bad now. The thoughts I had were, well, considering what you were thinking, I come across as a lot worse of a kid. You didn't like me?
No.
No, it definitely wasn't that. Cove lifted his head up, finally committing to meet your eyes fully once more. I remember you that day. I remember it really well. I don't think I'd ever be able to forget. I can picture the way you looked back then when I first saw you standing right here. I still know the expression on your face when you chose to sit with me in the grass. He chuckled self-derisively, interrupting his own monologue. You scared me at first. I figured I'd be all alone out there until I had to face my dad again, and then suddenly another kid appeared out of nowhere. It was startling, but I got over that fast. You were a strange person in a strange place, but in that moment, you were exactly what I needed. Somebody I could talk to freely about what was happening and how it made me feel. And you listened to me. You stayed with me. He sighed, then bit his lip as he gave a small smile. I was a little bit spoiled growing up. Let him continue. He looked off again, seeking clarity for his thoughts in the expanse of the night sky. What I'm trying to say is, when I was younger, I viewed myself basically as the center of the universe. I didn't even imagine it wasn't like that. Things didn't simply happen. That would be weird, according to my little kid brain. It made far more sense that everything in my life had a specific connection to me somehow, right? That's actually very normal developmentally. For that age, 8 years old. He sought affirmation in you, wavy eyebrows raised as he tried to explain his childlike logic. So at the time, you felt almost unreal. Like you weren't just anyone, some other kid who happened to live in the neighborhood with your own whole life that wasn't connected to Cove Holden. No, for me, you were there so that you could find me when I was lost. I kind of expected it to all vanish like a dream when the night was over. I would wake up and everything would be the same again. I'd be back in my bed at home, my real home, with both my parents. The future was something I couldn't picture anymore. I didn't know what school would be like when I went back, or the table where I'd eat breakfast the next morning, or anything. And if I couldn't imagine it, how could I think it was something actually happening? I couldn't grasp my new reality. It was too big for me to hold all at once. So I never thought I'd see you again. Then Cove beamed at you, his eyes shining bright. And I never, ever would have been able to guess that 10 years later, when I was a grown-up, the two of us would still be together. Guess that makes me your dream come true. You'd been joking, but Cove nodded in agreement. You are. You exactly are. Aww. But the smile faded from his face as his eyebrows drew together. That was the worst day of my life at the time, the day my family broke apart. It was too heavy for me to even think about. I felt that way for I don't know how long. He held a hand over his heart, connecting with the pain he had felt as a child, and looked at you earnestly.
Okay.
But that was never really true. Things have only gotten better with me and with Dad and Mom. It was the change we all needed. His eyes were growing misty. So when I remember that time right now, it's not the point that my life was over. It was only the moment that I met the woman I love. When I was crying to a stranger over what I thought I'd lost, I didn't have any idea that she would be the one thing in the world that I actually wouldn't be able to live without. Oh, God. I love you. He took in a breath, forever amazed when you spoke those words. I love you too, Kate. I'm gonna kiss him. He leaned into the kiss, his lips soft against yours. Cove sighed contentedly. His voice was as delicate as the petals on the poppies which crowned the hills. Hey, Kate, I'm so grateful you always stuck up for me. You didn't even know what to say back to that. His heartfelt appreciation left you speechless. He tilted his head up, lost in thoughts in the sparse clouds above. I wonder how late it is. I guess it doesn't really matter. My dad is fine with me being out whenever. Quietly nodded. Mr. Holden was content giving Cove all the freedom he could. Are you going to lay in the grass now? Wow, how'd you know? You're predictable. With a chuckle, Cove plopped down on the ground and laid on his back, his usual way of spending time there. Sat on his chest? Laid down and snuggled next to him. You lowered yourself against Cove's side in the grass and wrapped an arm over his chest. Cove smiled at you and used his free hand to cradle your face. The both of you fully settled to relax on the hill. It felt just like the beginning of one of your nightly outings, but then you realized the sun was peeking out over the horizon. Cove spoke up with a disbelieving tone. It really was late. Your neighbor wasn't a stranger to being awake at dawn, however not like this. He was normally an early sleeper, early riser. This unexpected sunrise particularly awed him. The two of you watched on silently as the sun began to light the world. Cove then propped up himself on the backs of his arms and looked at you with a soft expression on his face. Do you want to go back home? I could carry you if you're too tired. No, I want to stay here. You couldn't resist a yawn, but you were serious. It couldn't be time to go already. Cove chuckled affectionately and gripped you a little
I get
more.
it.
Okay, but it's been a long day. We've done a lot of things. Like, really a lot. It has to end sometime. I know, you're right. Yeah, too bad I am on that one, huh? But we can stay if you want to. Cove smiled brightly at you, as warm as the new rays of sun that were tickling your skin. In that moment, you couldn't have appreciated him being there more. Leaned into him. Bent yourself against Cove for extra support. He tilted his head against yours. Good morning, Cove. He gave you a bent smile and went for the opposite sentiment. Good night, Kate. The two of you remained together on that familiar poppy hill where you first met until the world began to fade and blur. You were falling asleep. A few more gentle words drifted into your consciousness.
See you tomorrow.
Your eyelids dipped, but you felt good. You were safe and relaxed. Everything that had come before this had reassured you of that. You were confident that when you opened them again, things would be okay. You opened your eyes. Instead of the walls of your room, you were surrounded by open sky. It was not soft pillows and sheets underneath you, but a bed of earth and grass that you'd taken last night. The day welcomed you with shining sun, a refreshing breeze, and the chirping song of birds. You cupped your face with your hands as you sat up, feeling the imprint of the blades of grass leaving lines in your cheeks. Oh, he's still there. I guess that makes sense. Hearing your name, you lowered your hands and looked around. There he was, your most influential neighbor, Cove Holden. He had made himself very comfortable, laying on his stomach with jewelry and shoes taken off and a flower in his hand. Good morning. It's not really the morning anymore. Cove laughed, tickled with the overall situation and simply being able to spend time like this. Told you I'd see you tomorrow. It's the exact same day, Cove. We were up till dawn. Doesn't make it a new day now just because we went to sleep later than normal. Then we disagree, because to me it's not really the next day until I've been to bed and woken up. But fine, I'll just have to make sure I see you tomorrow again. Probably the day after that, too. That way there's no argument. Cove turned his head up to the sky, his expression content. Looks like it's going to be a nice day. We'll have to come up with something to do to make the most of it. He trailed off, blinking slowly in the sunlight. Someday, when we're even older than we are now, I wonder what we'll end up remembering this moment for. What will we feel when we look back at it? Will it be the same as what we're feeling right now?
That's nice.
I can't see what the future is going to look like again, but I think that's all right. I think it'll mark another new start for me. Cove's eyebrows lifted as he turned to you. That's a good one. I want to think about it like that too. He eyed the hills sprawling out before you and down below, where the wild hill and nature gave way to civilization. Your home and Cove's lay down at the bottom, neatly filed among the other houses in the neighborhood. Hey, Kate, I bet I can beat you in getting back to the road. You laughed, amused by the wager that reminded you so many moments in your youth. As much as I like it here, it's okay if we leave now. We can always come back to see the poppies and the fireflies again, right? Cove met your eyes, waiting for what you were going to say in response. I'd like that. Cove blinked slowly, his eyes locked on you, but you didn't need to see his face to know that he adored you. If it had been any room for doubt, the tender way he spoke would have filled it up. You're really irreplaceable, huh? Cove beamed at you. His expression was so unlike the one he had worn when you first found him here, swaddled in sadness and uncertainty. Yet you couldn't help but glimpse the boy once more underneath his bright expression and matured features. Come on. He offered you a hand. You accepted it, your palm fitting round his. Cove lifted himself up, pulling you along too. Our parents probably aren't going to come running for us this time. We got to make our own call, and I say we can't hide away forever. Poppy Hill is just one part of things. There's more out there for us than this time and this place alone. Let's enjoy it. You couldn't say whether you were the one that broke into a run, if Cove had been the one to start it, or if your feet had simultaneously made that choice for you both. The end result was the same, with the two of you dashing down the hill like children, but with a nostalgic revelry that could only come as an adult. As the wind whipped past you, you knew that family and friends were waiting at the end of your sprint. There were more memories to make, after all. Life takes another step forward. Achievement unlocked. Our life. And we get credits! Because that's all there is to the game right now.
I wake up to the colors in the sky. The day is new, the sun is
I'm sorry, there were lyrics.
like a gentle.
Oh no! 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 I was just turning up the volume! I was turning up the volume! No! Can I go back? Guess not. Oh well. And as you saw, coming in 2021. So, well, I guess that's it for now. I'll have to figure out something different to do next Sunday, because that's all there is to the game for now. I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and please be sure to stay safe. I'll as soon as it comes out, I will. If there's a cutscenes thing, it might be there. Yeah, possible. Maybe gallery. No, this looks like it's just art. Yeah. Okay, well, I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and please be sure to stay safe.